face. You are on the North Georgia Sports Report podcast. Will Cooper, Art Mosley coming at you sort of live. We're recording this, obviously, but Art, back at it again, my friend. Kind of like we say every preseason show. It's been a while since I've seen your face, but it is good to see you, my friend.
It is good to see you, Coop. It is good to be seen. And if we're being seen or we're recording this in early August, that can only mean one thing, that high school football is right around the corner.
High school football is right around the corner. A couple of our teams played a scrimmage last Friday. We're recording this, first full week of August, and the rest of them will be taking in scrimmage games this Friday. So we'll be excited to see those teams. And we're going to go over everything you need to know about your 2025 Cherokee County teams. We always invite people to stay for the whole section. If you don't stay for the whole show, don't worry. We break it up into teams as well. If it's your first time here, we're the North Georgia Sports Report on the North Georgia Sports Network. Thank you for being with us. Basically, we're just a couple of random dudes who hop on, talk about high school football. We've lived in the area for a long time, and we like to think we know a little something about high school football. Maybe not, but we try.
I would think we're a little more than random. So let's give ourselves a little more credit with our experience either covering high school football throughout the state. And certainly this is not to toot our own horn, but we're leveling up this year with the YouTube version of the podcast. This is a project that's been going on for us together for about 4 or 5 years now. And then even before that, on our own Separate Worlds podcast, kind of outlining and showing the world, or hopefully the world, the world of Cherokee County football here, and back at it again for the 2025 season. And yeah, we've got a lot to talk about. We jump in here and recap some of the things that went on last season. And then, of course, we'll have 6 coach interviews. That's become a staple of our podcast, our preseason podcast, getting all 6 coaches involved and getting them on to come on and join us, talk about their team, the excitement in their communities, and what we can expect from those young men in all 6 of our county high schools this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Very excited to jump in, get to know our new coach and Coach Vavra at Etowah, coming over from Sprayberry and getting to reconvene with our other 5 county coaches that we got to know from last year and years prior as well. And just a couple of housekeeping items. The podcast will still be available, since some of you are probably listening on Apple Podcasts. Still on there. It's still on everywhere you get your normal podcasts. But if you do want to see what's going on, actual visual, then it's on YouTube. It'll also be clipped on Instagram, which we do have a new one of those. We changed the username, so we kind of kept it all the same. So if you're ever looking for us on any social media platform, it's now NGA Sportsnet across the board. No more this is the Instagram, this is the Facebook, this is the Twitter, X, whatever they call it. It's all the same. It's all level, so you can find us across the board. But yeah, absolutely. Lots of exciting things. Art, you're going to be on site for these games. It kind of depends as you're kind of rotating around the area instead of the county nowadays, but our focus on the county will still remain the same. The website has been updated fully, and we'll have previews and game reviews as well. So plenty of content. Make sure you're locked in, subscribed, keep us on the bookmark tab of the website, whatever you want to do. We're here for your enjoyment.
We are certainly here for your enjoyment. I know that even there are some of our coaches in the county that love to use our little bulletin board material, our previews weekly. So no doubt those will be continued this season. Like you said, we're bringing our post-game wrap-ups back, and we've got another exciting feature with that we're looking forward to. As you mentioned, Coop, I'll be on the radio this season, going back to work with an old friend of ours this season. I do a little moonlighting over there. So week to week, we'll let you know where we'll be on our podcast, but more to come on that. But for us at the North Georgia Sports Network, as you mentioned, we will certainly be more focused on our podcast this year and then our other media outlets. So we're excited about that for the upcoming season.
Absolutely, partner. Absolutely. Well, I think that's all the housekeeping stuff out of the way. We've waited for about 8 months to get to this point, so let's get into it. Let's talk about a little high school football. First thing we do on the show is go into a little bit of a review, talk about what we learned last year. So one theme came to mind for this year, and I'll apply it. It'll make sense. Stick with me. But one thing that I've thought about a lot is that teams have to learn not only how to win, but how not to lose. And we have a very interesting dynamic in the county right now where I think a lot of teams that people may not be thinking about probably know how to win better than other people out of the area are thinking. Sequoia comes to mind.
Certainly.
Quarterfinals, that game against Gainesville, against Woodward Academy, and then obviously Coffee. Some of the best games that we've seen personally. And then as you kind of look at I want to say turn the table, but you have the other side of the coin, right? Where you have the teams like Etowah, like Cherokee, that in transition, not solidified yet, but they're making big jumps, obviously changing some things up. So there's a lot of exciting things across the board. But I think my takeaway from last year is that across the board, our county teams are getting to the point where they're competitive not only in region, but also in the larger metro Atlanta area, which is not something that can be said lightly.
I agree, Coop. They are. And I don't know if it's exposure, it's the coaches leveling up, it's the players leveling up, a little bit of all of it. But you're right. Teams learning. I think learning how to win. One team that comes to mind is Woodstock. I know we talked about them last season, them learning how to win and then finally winning a big game, propelling them to the playoffs in Coach Divine's second season with a miraculous turnaround. But you'll see. We expect to see some of that growth in maybe from where Woodstock took those steps from, like you said, maybe a team like Etowah and a team like Cherokee, who's got a lot of pieces that they're trying to fit in and find some answers for this season. And then again, a team like Creekview, who has historically been in that upper echelon, but a lot of turnover in terms of graduation over the last 2 seasons, just with a lot of young men who had a ton of experience and now making way for a new crop of players over there off Owen Store Road. And how are they able to kind of turn the page with that? And I would say the same. I think Creekview and River Ridge probably in a similar boat, maybe within one standard deviation of one another in terms of replacing some talent. And then you mentioned the aforementioned Sequoia, who's made one of the deepest runs in the county since 2018. If I no, I take that back. No disrespect
2020.
to River Ridge 2020. Thank you very much to that region champ River Ridge team. But again, Sequoia most recently last season making it to the Elite Eight in a exciting football game. Maybe not if you're a Chiefs fan, but as an observer, that back and forth, maybe one of the best first halves of a high school football game I've ever seen in my life.
Well, it's kind of odd too. I looked up when I was writing the preview articles, which are available on the website. If you haven't checked those out, feel free to go take a look. They're a bit more in depth with each team. But did you know that Sequoia has not won a region title since 2003? It's just odd for a team that's been to the quarterfinals twice, in the last 7 years, but they haven't won the region each year they've done it. They've done it as the second seed. So I would like to see what they could do with the region title in a first seed, knowing that Skip Pope Stadium's going to be rocking.
Yeah, it would be nice to have that home seed. I don't want to say there aren't any absolutes. I know Sequoia has gone on the road a couple of times as a number 4 seed and upset a number 1 seed in their history, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. But certainly, you don't pick up Gainesville in round 1, like they did last year and had to do, which they won. But it would be interesting to see if Sequoia, both times they've made it to the Elite Eight in those last 7 years, as you mentioned, they've come out as a number 2 seed. If memory serves me correct, region champ, I believe, in the first year was Creekview in 2018 or 2018. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And then last year, region champ was Sprayberry, and Sequoia was runner up there. So twice a bridesmaid. Maybe they'll be the bride this year. Who knows?
There you go.
I think part of that, hopefully for all of our teams, as Coach Collins has eloquently mentioned, hey, we're just trying to get to that second season, and that really, and they talk about the pre-region schedule as kind of like a preseason, kind of tune up. That region schedule is that season 1. And if you can get to that tournament, that postseason tournament, anything can happen. And I think that Sequoia has really made the most of their opportunities over the last 3-4 years in the postseason play.
Yeah, and we're obviously looking way ahead, but I do believe that with the way the playoff bracket lines up, if River Ridge makes the playoffs, which, spoiler alert, I do think they'll be one of the 4 that gets in, they don't have to play Roswell in the first round, which would be a great change for them.
Last 2 years, Coop, and Yeah, that will be out of the realm of possibility, and that's a brutal region to match up with. That region seven, where you have Milton, Gainesville, and Roswell in the top. Three of the top four teams. That's we've gone through and we're working on our top 10 state rankings right now, and those three teams again find themselves at the top of Class 5A, which it should be expected.
Absolutely. It's just one of those regions that you kind of look at, and I mean we did last year. We talked about it honestly on the podcast that we kind of looked at that region and said, okay, it is what it is. I mean, you got to go play them. But yeah, I mean, you compare that to River Ridge, and then also for Woodstock, first time they had made the tournament in 5 years, I think, maybe six. But they had to play Milton.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, great. That's
fun.
awesome. Yeah, so I think River Ridge and Woodstock were both better teams last year than we gave them credit for, and I think they're in better spots this year than what we thought they might be, or people are giving them credit for one way or the other. So I think that those are both teams to watch, and I'll tell you, Creekview has not missed the postseason in back-to-back years under Coach Williams. So I would expect that they're going to have some kind of turnaround this year. And speaking of Coach Williams, he's going to be our first guest here, and that kind of brings us right into the Creekview. Did you like that segue? Is that
Hey,
good?
that was
Smooth?
classic. Just let's talk about Creekview. Last season, Coop, had their chances and just could not get over the hump in a couple of games. They were about as close as you can get to getting back to the playoffs for the second consecutive season. Um, 5-5 overall, 3-4 region record. This will be Coach Williams' seventh season in Creekview Coop, and not bad offensive production out of them. 28 points a game averaging. They gave up just a shade under 23 points a game. But I think the big question is they're losing Austin Guest at quarterback, who was kind of all everything for them last season.
Yeah, led him in rushing, had over 800 yards rushing, 11 touchdowns, and then also passed the ball for just under 1,700 yards, 15 touchdowns through the air. The one thing that I think we all kind of looked at and saw was that Austin Guest was a really good passer, but was turnover prone. He had 11 turnovers last year, right? And I think that for them, they're going to have to find production somewhere. Mason Munn comes back this year. That's great for his senior year. He was the second leading rusher on the team with 650 yards, just a touch over. And I'll tell you the other thing is that I think with the Penrod brothers coming back and Austin and Alex, basically I think that those are two of the most dynamic, talented, athletic guys that we've seen not only at Creekview but in Cherokee County for a while. Kind of reminds me of, when you talk about pure athleticism, like the Miles McGee's, the Adarius Harshaws, some of those type of guys. I think that those are going to be big additions offensively for them. And then, some younger guys too that we're looking at. Derek Mizak Jr. was a guy that we kind of saw in bits. I think he's going to take over the tight end role for them. So all that being said, I think there's a lot to like about Creekview, especially offensively. And defensively, it's a lot. I mean, they have a lot they got to replace. Brant
Yeah.
Freeman, Ryan Brooks, Evan Wayland, Andrew Hammond, Zach Wilkerson, J.D. Russell does return, but Kevin Mead, Ethan Durham. I mean, these are all guys that are gone, and it's in every level. It's a defensive line, linebackers, secondary. They're going to have to find a lot to replace, but if you trust one coaching staff to do that, it is Coach Williams and his staff over there at Owen Store Road.
Yeah, agreed, Coop. A couple of names I want to mention just ahead of our talk with Coach Williams, J.D. Russell in the secondary, Zach Reese, and also Hayden Hanson. I think are three names that we started to get familiar with a little bit late in the season. I think those young men will play a bigger role for at least that secondary. You mentioned Brant Freeman and Ryan Brooks. Almost, I felt like the heart and soul of that linebacker, that defensive core, along with Kevin Mead, Andrew Hammond, a couple of those other seniors. Just going to be a ton of production to replace. That just means there's a ton of opportunity for some young men to step up. Um, just to jump back on the offensive side of the ball real quick, Jackson Stanley is a name I think similar to Michael Roach a year before, just that go-to bellwether receiver for Creekview anytime they really needed a big reception. Seemed like Stanley was always the one that was making a play. He moves on to graduation So the question is, you mentioned Mizek at tight end. You mentioned Penrod, who plays both ways. Alex, who plays both ways at defensive back and wide receiver. But who will be that next receiver? Is it Penrod? Will it be someone else to step up? A name that I've been hearing a little bit is Robert Van Alstyne Jr. But we'll see what Coach Williams has to say about that. Young man who had a fantastic freshman season on the sub-varsity level, but as you know, when you step up to the varsity level, the competition, the speed, everything gets a little bit faster. Guys get a little bit bigger, stronger. So we'll see if he can kind of step into that role as well for the Grizzlies.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about their schedule. It's not a cakewalk, especially outside of the region. Opening up with a game at Calhoun, who, after losing to Creekview in that weird Friday that was stormy and half the games got canceled, half of them got rescheduled, some of them quit after 2 quarters or a quarter and a half. They're going to go to Calhoun, face the defending 3A champs. Then they've got North Forsyth, which I think North Forsyth is a very comparable program to Creekview. They do have some good pedigree there. One of those more physical teams as you kind of take a look across the board. And then Cambridge, who has turned that program around in a big hurry. Tyler Jones still over there as the head coach, I believe, correct?
Tyler Jones is still there. Coop, a guy we talked about last year for them also. They lose their starting quarterback. He graduates, but they still return their top 2 receiver, Craig Dandridge, who's headed to Georgia to play receiver, and then Hayden Cochiella. I believe I pronounced that first name right, but a lot of talent over there at Cambridge, so a very formidable opponent. You mentioned North Forsyth. They got a senior running back coming back, Darren Perry, who was injured a little bit last season, but still was able to give teams fits. And as you mentioned, Calhoun, just a historical juggernaut up there in Northwest Georgia, over there in Gordon County. As you mentioned, Class 3A defending state champs. They made a move at quarterback kind of early in the season and got everything working right. They will be missing Amari Winston Jr., who moves on. I'm sure Coach Williams and his staff is glad they don't have to defend that guy at tight end. He was an absolute load. But certainly Calhoun is not going to be an easy challenge, and they're actually going to be playing at Phil Reeve Stadium to open up the season. So I believe their first 2 games this year are on the road at the Grizzlies, and then they'll come back home for Cambridge on the 29th. But not an easy row to hoe in the first few weeks of the season before you jump into region play.
Yeah, and I like the way the region schedule kind of lines up for them a little bit, especially if they do struggle with Calhoun and Cambridge, who are going to be favored quite heavily. Obviously, that doesn't mean anything sitting here on August 5th, but it could potentially be something where they end up in region play 0-3, 1-2, just if you're going based off of the favorites. But they do get Lassiter and Riverwood to open up their region schedule, not dogging either of those teams, but historically speaking, they're not always the ones that you have to turn your head and look at super, super hard before they end up going and playing, Woodstock, Sprayberry, Pope, River Ridge, and Sequoia to round out the region schedule. I think if there's one game that you want to circle, it's probably the Woodstock game, since that was a game that last year, I think even for us, they went in 4-1 into that game, and Woodstock had beat some teams that were not great, and I don't think anybody would bat an eye at that. I mean, they beat North Springs, they beat Woodland Cartersville. Now they beat the brakes off of them, but it wasn't like this is a high quality strength of schedule to this point. But they walked right into the den and made a heck of a game out of it and came away with the win. So I think for Creekview, if you're circling key games, Woodstock's probably number 1, and then I think River Ridge is probably number 2. And then Sequoia is number 3, because depending on how many of those games you win, assuming you win against the teams you're supposed to beat, then that puts you in the catbird seat for not only the playoff running, but it also puts you in the region title conversation, depending on what Sprayberry, Pope, Sequoia look like.
Absolutely, Coop. Will be a pivotal game this season, I believe. I think both of those teams have to have, and we'll talk about Woodstock's side of that coin. Regardless of how you come out that region, that pre-region schedule, those first 3 games, I think it's imperative that you take a team like Riverwood, where you'll have at home. You'll have to go on the road to Lassiter, but you've got to go win. You can't underestimate these guys, because Lassiter has a lot coming back on their team, a lot of production coming back for the Trojans over there. So So this is a region I don't think you can really take anybody for granted, and especially a team like Creekview who's still got a lot of holes to fill. You can't drop a game to a Lassiter or a Riverwood and to be in contention for one of those spots when you go over to Woodstock and try to return the favor.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I tell you the other thing to worry about, I don't want to say worry about, that's such a negative word, but something to consider or something that the coaching staff will have on their board as well, is you kind of mentioned the numbers about their scoring starts, defense, and they were actually plus in point differential, which is very odd for a team that ended up where they did. I mean, they were 500 team last year, so it's not the craziest thing in the world. But when you look at the losses that they had, normally when you kind of look at those, you would think, man, they must have lost some real close games. It's more about their wins that were close. They beat Calhoun by 7. They beat
Right.
North Forsyth by 6. They
Hmm.
did, they beat Lassiter and Riverwood like they should, and Pope as well. And then they lost to Woodstock by a touchdown, lost Rivers by 10, lost Sequoia by a touchdown.
Right.
It's just like the margin was there. Like I always love the baseball stat. I wish we had it for football. The wins above replacement.
Yeah. War. Yep.
Yeah, because it's like what would that be? Like who is that makes you a field goal better or a touchdown better? And do you have that this year? Because if you flip those that you lost by one possession or less, you're going to beat Woodstock and you beat Sequoia. Your two losses are to River Ridge and Sprayberry. That would have made a whole mess of the thing, with two lost, two lost, two lost to everybody
Right.
else. But you're not far off from being a 2 or 3 seed in that scenario.
Yeah, you're not, and I think that's why these coaches, as we hear them harp on just mastering the little things, and that I think it's the things that happen in the weight room in February where nobody's looking, and things that happen on the track in June when nobody's looking, at things that happen in July again when nobody is looking, that make the difference in some of these outcomes. And I think that's why coaches harp on the little things all the time. We can sit back and prognosticate all we want, but I think it is a accumulation of those small wins these coaches are trying to gain week in and week out. And again, I know that all 6 of our coaches are so hyper focused on this. But again, it's the margin for error is so slim with regards to making it to the postseason, and I think we saw that last season. And those stats that you pointed out are highlight that as we get in. And Coop, we're trying to get Coach Williams in. He is letting us know he is working to get in here for our podcast here.
And joining us now on the North Georgia Sports Report podcast, the head coach of the Creekview Grizzlies, Coach Williams. Coach, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Always excited to talk to y'all to start football season. It means the off season's over and it's finally time to kick it off.
Hey, you got it, Coach. You got it. You guys will take on Cherokee in your scrimmage this upcoming week, so we'll be excited to see how you guys handle the Warriors this week. But want to take a step back, kind of look at the whole roster and last year for you guys. I'll start with kind of the season last year. It's kind of a fits and starts, beating a Calhoun team that ended up winning 3A, beating North Forsyth, and then, kind of in the region schedule a fast start. What's your takeaway from last year, and how do you think that maybe applies to this year? Is there anything you learned that you're kind of looking at in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of sounding cliche, right? The old football adage, you got to play great defense, you got to protect the football and not turn it over, and you got to score touchdowns in the red zone, and we weren't able to do those last 2 things down the stretch. And really, to me, as cliche as it sounds, that was the difference. You look at the games that we were successful in, Calhoun, North Forsyth, those types of games, we protected the football. We were able to score touchdowns in the red zone. And the games that didn't go our way, we had too many turnovers. And when you give good teams extra possessions, you're not going to come out on the good side of that very often.
Coach, we took a look at your roster a little bit before you came on and just kind of rehashing last season and even over the course of the last 2 seasons, the amount of production you guys have lost over both sides of the ball is enough to make any grown man cry, I would say. You've got a handful of young guys coming back on that offensive side of the ball. We know Austin Guest, I feel like it's been at Creekview since Moby Dick was a minnow, as my dad used to say. What does that quarterback 1 position look like in that battle coming out of fall camp or summer camp here? and what are some of the pieces around that quarterback position that you're excited about this year?
Yeah, Alex Penrod is won the starting job at quarterback. Was our backup last year. Played some wide receiver for us just because he was a good enough athlete where we needed to get him on the field. Natural leader, has an edge about him when he steps on the field. Super competitive. Really excited about the progress he's made this offseason. Obviously, when you replace a 3-year starter and a guy that was a 4-year letterman, there's some learning and some growth period there, but couldn't be more pleased with where he's at right now and what he looks to do this season. But around him, it starts with we've kind of got a 3-headed monster in the backfield. Mason Munn is a name you guys all know, returning for his 4th year playing varsity football for us. But 2 young guys that have been lighting up the JV games last year and this offseason are Travis Vines and Carson Lott, 2 junior running backs. Both had great years for us, great off seasons. So we feel like we've got 3 really good backs that can kind of share that load back there. And then at the wide receiver spot, pretty much all new, right? We've got Robert Van Alstyne out wide. We've got Chris Thoreau, who's a guy joining us from the baseball team, out wide. Jackson Shirley's a name, also a baseball kid that's going to have some time at wide receiver. Zach Reese is actually going to flip over and start on offense for us. And then you'll see Austin Penrod split time offensively and defensively, just to name a couple of those guys. And then Derek Mizak, getting him back at tight end and healthy. Really look for a big year out of him. I think he's a college football prospect and going to have a big year for us.
And Coach, since you kind of mentioned the defense there, I'll turn my attention there. A lot of change going to happen on the defensive side of the ball this year. Obviously, losing guys like Brant Freeman, Ryan Brooks. There's a lot of turnover really in all 3 levels. As you mentioned, Penrod coming back, playing a little defense this year and kind of partnering there with J.D. Russell. But can you walk us through what the defense has looked like as you're going through camp right now, and how do you feel about really the whole unit as an 11-man team right now?
Yeah, and that's really the message, right? To me, it's can the sum be greater than the sum of the parts, or however the saying goes, right? If we can play as an 11-man unit, we got a chance to be special. And I don't throw that word around lightly. Feel really good about the 4 in the back end with Hayden Hansen coming back at corner with a lot of experience, Penrod and J.D. Russell at safety, Zach Reese, Ben Thoreau, and some other guys splitting time at the other corner. Really feel good about those 4. And then our defensive line has really come on strong this offseason. Jason Nix, Ryan Marinson, could go on and on. Caden Simpson's another one. Moreno at nose. We've got 6 or 7 guys that we feel like we can roll at the defensive line. And then Mason Munn's going to flip over and play some outside linebacker for us, which will help solidify that side. Carter Cundy is another name that got some time last year, missed some time due to injury, but he'll be back for us. And then Braden Kimber, Landon Parker, Hudson Stanley, who, everybody knows Jackson, his older brother, but Hudson had a great baseball season, going to come in and play some linebacker for us. So it's a young group, but it's a talented group. We're really excited about the growth that they're going to show this season. Are we a finished product on August the 7th, 5th, whatever it is? No. But, can we build and play our best football come region time? I hope that's the case.
Coach, we wrapping it up here with you this afternoon. We don't want to put a bullseye on you or any team, but for you, what does success look like in this 2025 season for these, I would say, young and upcoming Grizzlies who are probably chomping at the bit to get their turn on the field? A group as a whole, those sophomores, especially those sophomores and juniors, have had a ton of success at the sub-varsity level the last couple of years. What is your expectation for them and this team this season as we sit here right before this Cherokee scrimmage?
Yeah, I mean, they're excited. It's a group with a ton of talent. Reminds me a lot of kind of that 2021 season after you lose all those defensive players and a quarterback in 20. We've got some really talented seniors leading the way with great leadership. And then we've got a bunch of young bucks that they've got to take under their wing that have to gain experience, right? And there's no way to gain that experience other than playing the game. So can we get better week over week? Can we play better football after fall break into the region, and hopefully play our best football into the latter half of the region schedule and into the playoffs? That's going to be success. Is, can we take the journey on and get better and better, and the momentum, that boulder kind of roll downhill, as you will, and be a better football team week 10 than we are week 1.
That certainly sounds like a recipe for success, or just the makings of it. Hey, let's take it one step at a time and 1 week at a time, and rep by rep. Coach, we look forward to seeing you guys play. I look forward to getting out, seeing you guys play. Coop, my plan is to be there in Calhoun with the WLJA. I believe we're going to be broadcasting that football game from Calhoun. So we're excited to seeing you guys play, and also excited to see these young Grizzlies grow up and these older Grizzlies really take the reins. Coach, as always, we appreciate you joining us this week, and we look forward to talking to you later in the season as we feature you all as our game of the week later on in this season.
I appreciate it. And before we go, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the offensive line. That's a group with Ryan Sullivan coming back at left tackle. Caleb Glover got some time at center and guard last year. He'll anchor the center spot. Journey Cowart played a big role. He was kind of our 6th man and turned into our 5th man last year towards the end of the year. And then we've got some young ones, Colton Champagne, Kanan Benefield, Wyatt Hill, some of those guys. They've grown up so much from January to now. And I can't wait to watch them continue to grow up through the season. And as always, your success as a football team is going to run through that group. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention them before we ran. But really excited about that group and the size and the physicality that they've shown to this point.
Absolutely, Coach. We know Sullivan was an all-region performer last season, so he will definitely be an anchor up front with those other names that you mentioned. So we know that the brand of football that we've come to know for you guys is physical and getting after it and right along those lines of scrimmage. So there's no doubt in my mind that this group will fall right into that. And we're looking forward to watching them compete this season.
I appreciate it.
A big thank you to Coach Williams for joining us here. Art, sounded very hopeful about the program. I think for us as commentators kind of looking across the county, when Creekview's good, it's good for the rest of the county, because for a lot of years they set the standard for how football was played in the county. And I think getting back to his excitement about the offensive line, his excitement about the defense, that's kind of the Creekview that we've come to know.
Absolutely. There's a lot of youth, a lot of opportunity, a lot of excitement, like we mentioned prior to talking to Coach Williams, and he's got a lot of optimism about this upcoming season. And then, look, I can't wait to have an opportunity to watch him compete. They'll certainly be in action this Friday night against Cherokee. Get a chance for everybody to get kind of the those jitters and those nerves out before they take that road trip to their first of many difficult contests of the season, But yeah, looking forward to watching Creekview compete. And like you mentioned, when they're good, I think it raises the bar for the county.
Perfect. I agree 100%. So excited to see what the Grizzlies have. Again, they're going to take on Cherokee, scrimmage game this Friday. Go check it out. And then they open up the season at Calhoun, which I think you broke some news there that you were going to be there. Just threw that out there casually in that.
Just to make sure everybody's listening, Coop, the goal right now is to be there, along with our friends over at the local radio station, LJA and WPGY, who'll be broadcasting games, like you said, mentioned a little more throughout the region. And I say region, northwest
area.
Georgia, the area this season, and working on that with our good buddy Dave Garner. To call that game with him.
And if anybody doesn't know why I'm not involved,
why we're next to each other right now,
I moved. So we'll see how long I'm here. But I moved, and I'm enjoying Texas high school football as it ramps up 2 weeks behind the Georgia thing. But my love for football sports started in Cherokee County, and that doesn't just go away. So that's why we're doing this virtually. I'm halfway across the country from home, but very excited, and I'm excited for you and Dave. Obviously, Dave and I go way back. We've worked together for 8 years at this point. And obviously you and I have worked on this podcast for 3 years. This is our third year, and then before that as well. So just excited for you guys and super excited for the whole thing. Probably should have put that at the top, but whatever. Threw it in the Creekview segment. So
it's in here. It's in here leading up to our next segment. But Coop, yeah, you're in the Texas, right, where they believe they're right about everything except that their high school football is second fiddle to the state of Georgia, and we both know that. And so we'll let you soak that in, and you can come back home. And per capita, I don't think there's any state better in football than the state of Georgia.
Yeah, and I'll put this real quick. The stadiums here, unmatched. They're unbelievable. 1,000%. Our little town that I moved to here in Salina, their local stadium seats like 9,500 people. Okay, it's like double the capacity of our Cherokee County schools. And it's ridiculous. But what I will say is that when you look at like the top 100 players, or you look at the depth of college talent that we've seen in Cherokee County, if you picked a random school out of a hat in Georgia and you picked a random school out of a hat in Texas, you're statistically better to get a better football team out of Georgia because there's less high schools, there's less population. So when we talk about Texas high school football being this machine that turns out things, they do. But there are some just teams that don't have anything. And I know that's true in Georgia too. I'm not arguing that. But the numbers of it just kind of coincide with that as well. I think you shared something that Cam Newton had said, or maybe it was Dave. But imagine if Georgia had the population of a Texas or a California. And that's very, very true. But all that being said, very excited for you guys, excited to be a listener and a spectator for Cherokee County football instead of being more involved in the podcast and a writer. But overall, really excited for you guys, and obviously excited for Creekview. So appreciate Coach Williams for joining us. So that leads us right in to our next segment, which will be the Etowah Eagles, my friend. And you talk about a team that is very difficult to understand at this current moment, and that is Etowah. Reason I say that is because they have young and talented and experienced roster. They're young and experienced, which we normally don't put together. But you have guys like Zeke Douglas, Walker Hughes, that we've kind of got to know over the last couple of years by way of injury. Not that they were necessarily ready or that they were better than who was in front of them, but by injury's sake. So you got a guy in Zeke Douglas who started in his entire sophomore year last year. Thank you for joining us on the North Georgia Sports Report podcast. And joining us now is the head coach of the Etowah Eagles, Coach Vavra. Coach, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's my pleasure.
Absolutely, Coach. Absolutely. Obviously, newcomer to the group this year. We're excited to have you in county. Really excited to not have to face you in Sprayberry anymore because Cherokee County has not had the best of luck going down to Marietta over the years. So how has the transition been for you? You've obviously been at Sprayberry for a long time, coming over to an Etowah team that's had some fits and starts over the last few years. What's the transition like, and how are you liking your new home in Woodstock?
Right, yeah. It's been good. It's been smooth. Obviously change is tough. It's never easy, especially when you've been somewhere like at Sprayberry as long as I was, off and on for, 13 plus years, 8 years as the last 8 years as the head coach. It was a really tough decision that I made, but the transition's been really smooth though. Support's great. The administration is awesome. My coaching staff getting that, got that finalized, and the coaching staff is gelling together nicely. The kids are working really hard. The booster club is amazing. So we've got some really, really good things going. We'll just see if we can get it turned around on the field. I feel pretty good about it. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we're doing the right things. We got the right systems and the right people in place to make a positive impact.
Coach Vavra, one of the things that we've come to take away from your teams in the past at your time at Sprayberry was their physicality. I think one of the things I remember the most will be watching you guys come to Creekview in 2000, that COVID year, and Isaiah Abbey coming kind of off the bench in relief, and just the physicality of not just him as a running back, but your offensive line. And I feel like we've seen that over and over and over again. Is that something that we can expect for you to bring with you over to Etowah? And what's the kind of mentality that you're looking to establish in that program?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer that physicality wins football games. I mean, it's this the way the game is supposed to be played. It's the way I've always known the game to be. Um, and as you know, there's been some changes over the years with the spread offenses and all that. But I believe you got to play great physical defense to be successful, and you got to run the ball well. And it starts with the guys up front. So that is a mentality that is going to be developed. It's going to take some time, but we're already working to establish that. I think you can develop that in the weight room. I think you can develop that with the way you coach your kids and just putting that mindset, that mentality, developing that within them. Coaching your O line, better be your tightest knit group, because they're the least selfish guys on the field. They do all the work, and they don't get credit for hardly anything. So that's why I love this game. But yeah, physicality is absolutely is important, and it's important to establish that. And I think you'll see that over time that's going to be who we are as our identity.
And Coach, as we were kind of talking about when you joined us here, we've kind of seen this Etowah team, over the last couple of years, by way of injury, have some players that stepped up in a big way in their freshman, sophomore years who are now juniors, seniors moving into this year, and they've played for full seasons or they have a ton of game experience. Have you seen that from your perspective as a coach? And what kind of have you seen from the talent that you have on the field as far as their experience level and what you expected when you came into the building?
Yeah. I think we've got some pretty good skill players, and we've got some good linemen. We may not be quite as deep as I'd like to be. Obviously, that's usually a problem with most high school programs. But our lines of scrimmage, we're not real big. We're undersized. We're not real long. We're kind of shorter and a little bit squattier. But to me, that doesn't mean a whole lot as long as they're willing to get after it and they're coachable and they're doing the right things and getting stronger, which they are. But I think those guys up front, we only have a few guys that have played some varsity football up front on the offensive line. Preston Shug started, I think, every game last year at center. He's as a sophomore, so he's back as a junior. Then you got Zeke Douglas at quarterback, who, with the injury to the quarterback last season, unfortunate, but Zeke was thrust into the starting role and he started all 10 games. And so I've always said this, there is no substitute for Friday night experience. So it goes a long way. So Walker Hughes is another one. He played running back. I mean, when I was at Sprayberry and we went over to Etowah last year, he busted a 70-yard touchdown run against us. The kid, he's got some real speed, and he's a very athletic, dynamic player, going to play both sides of the ball for us. Then I was thinking our guard Will he's a senior, but started last year on the offensive line as well. Trying to think if there's any other younger guys. There's a couple other sophomores that played last year on Friday nights and got some experience. So, but yeah, we're still, I would say, overall a young team, but that experience that our quarterback and Zeke Douglas got, the experience that Preston got, and some of the other guys is gonna be big. We got Kane Moss, who's back. He played in the secondary last year, but we moved him down to a Sam outside linebacker position. So, but he's a really good player. He's pretty dynamic. He can cover guys. He can fit the box. He can do a lot of different things for us. So, I have seen that. And God willing, we're we're doing the right things to try to prevent the injury bug from hitting us. So, and I think we're doing the right things, and the kids are working hard.
Coach, I know we mentioned we were going to give you 4 questions, but we might give you a couple bonus ones here. Just as a new a head coach with a new staff, you mentioned getting those guys in order. What does your staff look like for you this year, offense, defense, and what are you expecting from them to as you guys help get these young men ready and prepared for your first regular season game in a couple weeks here against Woodstock.
Yeah, sure. I'll just start. I'll name the guys I got on staff. I'll start offensively. I was fortunate enough to bring over my offensive coordinator from Sprayberry, who I've been with for 2 years. So we're going on season 3 together. He's a young guy. He's really sharp. Ben McLean does a really, really good job, and he's I see him grow over the last 2 seasons. From year 1 to year 2, it's just been tremendous growth with him, and running that offense and doing a great job coordinating it. So brought him over with me from Sprayberry. I brought my receivers coach, Jack Marinick, who's an even younger guy. I hired him when he was 21 years old to be a community coach for me, but he's my special teams coordinator. He's my receivers coach. He does a really, really good job with our receivers, very sharp, very going to be a great coordinator one day. So Jack Marinick. I got Taylor Majors is coaching our running backs. He's been on staff. He's been there for a long time. He's a baseball guy and a football guy, but he played at Etowah, so he's got that, that pride about him for coaching at his alma mater. I know all about that. Doing a great job with our running backs. And then I've got 2 offensive line coaches that were both on staff last season. Ben Martin, who called the offense last year, longtime Cherokee County guy. But he's coaching our offensive line, doing a great job with them. And then Ulrich John, who was there last season, former NFL guy, played at Georgia State, and kind of crazy coincidence that Ulrich and Ben McLean, offensive coordinator, were college teammates at Georgia State. So they've got a long history of working together, and it's kind of cool. And then I brought Russ Isham with me. Russ was a longtime head coach and been doing it for a long time. He's retired. He was at Etowah a couple seasons ago, and then I stole him and brought him to Sprayberry with me. So coached with him at Sprayberry last season. Then I brought him back to Etowah this year. So he's on staff. He's coaching our tight ends and our fullbacks. Yeah, we're pretty sure that's my offensive staff. Defensively, Davis Harvey. Kept him on staff. He was the defense coordinator the last year. I've known Davis for a long, long time. Great guy. Been doing it for 30 years. I think this is year 30 for him. So I've never worked with Davis, but I've known him from coaching track and coaching against each other for a long time. And he's a great guy. Kids love him. Does a great job. So we got Davis. I brought John Warnquist with me from Sprayberry. He was coaching my inside backers at Sprayberry. Now he's coaching my outside linebackers. So fortunate enough to bring him. He's a math teacher. Got him in the building. I brought, let's see here. Oh, Chris Bryce is coaching the inside backers. He's been on staff, but he was on staff back when I was at Etowah in my first go round when I was assistant running the defense. So I think he was helping out with defensive line then, but now he's coaching the inside backers. So he's been there for 10 years now and just does a great job, man. He's also the head soccer coach, but former Sprayberry alum as well. Inside backers, D-line, Andrew Sugg, our strength coach, does a fantastic job in the weight room and then coaching our defensive line. Casey Wingard, another former Etowah alum, who I kept both those guys on staff. They're doing a great job with the defensive line. And then Corbin Jackson, one of my former players that I coached at Sprayberry, played at Charleston Southern. He's community coaching and helping Davis out in the secondary. So that's varsity staff. I got some freshman guys. Calvin Ragsdale kind of landed in our lap from Paulding County, helping out with the freshmen. Jeff Truin, other longtime guy, been at Etowah, helping out with the freshmen, and then Jason Borchardine is our head freshman coach. So we got 16 coaches. The guys are doing a great job. Back to your original question, I think, my expectations for those guys is, one, we got to work really well together. I always tell people this when I interview them. You've got to be able to get along with the guys you work with because we spend so much time with each other, pouring into other kids, that if you don't enjoy each other's company and you can't get along, it's not going to make for an enjoyable experience for each other. So that's the expectation, and also that they got to be knowledgeable, they got to show up and work hard, they got to take accountability, they got to take initiative, and they got to do a great job of developing relationships with our kids so that we get the most out of our players.
Coach, as you kind of look ahead to this year, you're moving into not only a new school, but moving up classification in the new 6A, 7A, whatever you want to call it, the old 7A. But obviously, it's a tough region. I mean, it's pretty stacked when you look at North Cobb, Walton, Marietta, obviously not being what they have been of late, but historically speaking, is that something that you kind of look at this point in the season, and you kind of start tracking where those teams are and their out of region schedule? Or is it something that you're just not worried about, focused on beating that team down the road come in a couple Fridays?
Yeah, well, we're gonna focus on the day to day and the week to week. We're not gonna look ahead at anybody. That's my message to our team is look, focus on the process. Don't worry about the outcome. You can't. The only thing you can control is what you're doing at practice on a day to day basis and in the weight room. Now, as coaches, I think it's natural for us to look at it and go, yeah, it's a tough region. But I also think at the same time, you know, um, you know, if we do what we're capable of doing and we develop our kids, then we can compete with anybody in our region. And, our goal is ultimately to make the playoffs and eventually compete for a region championship. But messaging to the team is to focus on the day to day and focus on the process. And, we're going to be a process oriented organization, and that's just the way it is. And I think if you can get your kids to focus on that and being in the moment and doing things with a purpose, then the outcome will take care of itself.
Well, Coach, I was going to ask you how you would define success, but I feel like you kind of wrapped it up a little bit in that answer, and that previous answer. So you kind of stole my thunder and answered that without. You're going to the head of the class already, Coach. So I don't have any other questions. One, I just wanted to again welcome you back to Cherokee County. I know that you were at Etowah in a prior life, and like Will said, I probably go along with Coach Williams and Coach Teeter and Coach Collins and Coach Devine to say that we're glad you're not at Sprayberry anymore, because we're tired of seeing you whip up on us. But we certainly do wish you a ton of success here in Cherokee County, not only this season but going forward. And it's been a while since we've seen Etowah in the playoffs, and I tell you what, things are better when they're there. So we're pulling for you to get back there, whether it be this year or in the upcoming seasons.
I appreciate that. Thanks a lot, Art.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Coach, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Yeah. Y'all have a great night.
So again, thank you to Coach Vavra for being with us here on the North Georgia Sports Report podcast. And Art, takeaways from that interview, my friend? I mean, a very detailed guy. You can kind of tell from his answers, and that's something that I think is a big reason he was successful at Sprayberry, and hopefully that success continues up here at Etowah.
Yeah, extremely detailed guy. Coop, we know this is a guy that can coach. And one of the things I was hoping, I felt like Etowah teams of old were going to kind of beat you up and down the field. It was kind of a black and blue team. And I think you get that same thing with Coach Vabra. We've seen that in the past with the Sprayberry teams over the last several seasons, but really have had, when in region play, have had our number here in Cherokee County. And certainly he moves over here to Etowah. They've got similar to Creekview, a lot of skill position guys to replace, a lot of opportunity for some of these young guys. But as you all discussed, and especially in your questions, you talked about players like Walker Hughes and Zeke Douglas and Preston Shug returning on that offense, guys that have played many varsity reps already in their first couple of seasons. By way of injury, they've had to go out there and get it done, but they're a little bit better. It's a lot easier starting off as a starting quarterback, having taken your lumps maybe in your sophomore season than as you do in your, taking them as your junior season. So a guy who's got a lot of high school football left to play, a few guys who have a lot of football left to play, but they're going to have, there are a lot of holes to fill in this Etowah team. And really almost nowhere to go but up. A team that finished 2-8 last season, 1-5 in the region. You mentioned Coach Vavra has had a lot of success as a head coach, 41 overall wins over his, I believe, 8 seasons. This is his 8th season, I believe, or 8th or 9th season coming in here to Etowah, year number 1 at Etowah. But I think there's a lot to be excited about. You've got a great mix of a staff where you got some professional experience on there. You've got a lot of collegiate playing experience. You've got a lot of guys who've had years. He mentioned Coach Harvey, a guy who's been around the game for over 30 years now. guys he brought over from his staff at Sprayberry, guys he's known from his tenure as his coaching career. So I think there's a lot to be excited about with this Etowah Eagles football team.
Yeah, I think they're in a somewhat similar spot to where Woodstock was a couple of years ago, bringing in Coach Devine. I think they're in a spot where they're trying to rebuild, honestly. Which I think if we had talked like this in August of 2023, we'd be like, what are we talking about here? Because they were loaded on talent. We're talking about Reese Weir, we're talking about Xavier Mahoney, we're going back those guys, Jack Strickland, and it just so happens that I really think it was just injury. I mean, it's really the only way to put it. Because even last year, we didn't feel like it was going to be that big of a downgrade for them. They were losing some pieces, but just not getting to see the full team out there. And when you're in the highest classification in Georgia, there's no substitute. You have to be at full strength, especially when you start the season. So it's a tough break, but I think that there's a lot of benefit to having younger guys that, and like Coach Vavra said, there's no substitute for getting out under the front Friday night lights. That's the experience that you're going to get. So they're one of three teams in the county that has a returning quarterback. It just so happens that in Zeke Douglas's case, he probably doesn't get the attention he deserves because they were in a really tough spot last year. I think that he's one of the more talented players in the county. I think he's going to be somebody that, as we kind of see him progress through his junior season this year, senior season next year, we might talk about him in the way that we've talked about some other guys over the past couple of years. So a lot to like. I think that it's going to be, and kind of like you asked Coach Vavra about, that physicality, how quickly does that take hold? And that's why I kind of compare it to Woodstock and their rebuild in particular, because it was very similar to what Coach Devine did at Woodstock, was that we may not win every game, but we're going to play a physical brand of football. And on Saturday, people are going to know they played us because they're going to wake up a little bit sore than if they had played us a couple years ago. I think that's still the same case for them. So all that being said, I hope it translates to some good things on the field. I think it's going to be a situation much like we had at Woodstock, where these are teams that have to learn how to win and they have to learn how to not lose. Those are two different things, two totally different things. I think they know how to win. It's not like they're winless. It's not like they haven't won anything. It's just that they haven't made the tournament since 2019. So they just haven't had the playoff experience. They just haven't been in it. So I hope that it translates to some good things for them. We talked about the region art. It's brutal. I mean, it is what it is. You're playing in the highest classification in Georgia. Everybody's in the same boat.
Right.
But yeah, you got to go play North Cobb. You got to play Walton. You got to play Marietta. Wheeler was a really good team last year. We'll see what they are this year, kind of up in the air. North Paulding is historically a pretty good team. Last year, they certainly gave our Cherokee County teams their fits and starts. So I guess my outlook on Etowah would be it's hopeful, but understanding where they are in terms of the rebuild is also important. And I think that they have a big step ahead of some of the other rebuilds we've seen because of their experience that they do have just from their younger players that are now moving into the upper class side.
Yeah, Coop, I think just kind of looking at their schedule, even at that region schedule, regardless of what happens in the first 4 weeks, where you got Woodstock, you're at Sprayberry, you got Campbell, and go to Chapel Hill. Those are opportunities for this Etowah team to make some big strides. And I think it starts in earnest at Northcutt Stadium in when they travel to play Marietta on September 19th. I think that's a game that's a must-have for Etowah if we're going to start talking about playoff contention. We're looking at a region that, at least for a schedule for Etowah, it's backloaded. I think at the last two games, you've got Walton and North Cobb you finished the season with that are absolute meat grinders of teams, where we know what Walton has been. They've got a lot to replace, but they have been a solid football team, and certainly North Cobb is the region favorite this season. So you're looking at you don't want to be too presumptuous, but yeah, you typically pencil those two teams in. And you've got a Wheeler team, which if I'm not mistaken, Etowah did beat last season. You've got to win. You've got to beat at least three teams. So you're looking at Marietta, Cherokee, North Paulding, and Wheeler. I feel like this Marietta game is a game you have to have. Another team that's going to be debuting a new head coach this season, so there should be a lot of optimism on Eagle Mountain. I'm not saying it's improbable, but they certainly do need to take that game. And then I think another pivotal game is the following week when they play their county rival Cherokee at home. I know that's early in the region schedule, but it's almost like a playoff elimination game as we kind of take a look at these things. I don't want to jump too far ahead, Coop, because I get excited about these things looking at schedules. But certainly not out of the realm of possibility for this Etowah Eagle team to sniff the playoffs in Coach Vavra's first year as head coach.
No, and that's kind of the benefit, if you want to find one, of playing in the highest classification, is that you tend to have smaller regions than you do elsewhere. In 5A, our teams that are in there playing a huge region. So you really only need to win 2 games if you're lucky. 3 games is usually that sweet spot. So you kind of look and you pick your spots. Marietta's not been what they've been in recent years. So how do they look? Cherokee's in there, right? Cherokee's kind of in a similar transition year. They've lost a lot. North Paulding and Wheeler, again, what are they actually going to be? This Etowah beat Wheeler last year. It's not out of the realm of possibility. And then Walton and North Cobb, different conversation.
Sure.
But there are 4 winnable games on their schedule in the region that if you win those, you're 4-2, and you're right there in the running for a 2nd or 3rd seed. So at the end of the day, I feel like this is an Etowah team, especially if they improve week over week, and the brand of football that we see on August 15th against Woodstock improves week over week. I think this is a team that could very easily make the region tournament and could end up in the playoffs for them. So that's kind of my takeaway. I kind of hate it. We don't have a ton of names to throw out just because they're in such a transition year. We know some of the younger guys that have played. Like he mentioned, Kane Moss. Mm-hmm. We've obviously seen Kane play. I think he's a 2-year starter. He's starting his 3rd season because he started as a sophomore, I think, in the secondary. These are guys that we've kind of talked about for a couple years. So hopefully these are names that make a big impact, and I'm excited to see what they put together, even against that game against Woodstock. I don't see that as a game that they can't win. It's just that Woodstock right now has a lot of momentum with their program.
Absolutely. Whether they win that game or not, I think we will learn a little bit more. As you mentioned, some of these names that Coach Vavra threw out, especially along the offensive line, will they be able to gel under Carter Show, the all-region performer last year? Will they be able to combine? And they're almost in a similar spot like Creekview. They've just got a lot of guys that have had some minutes here or there, but certainly looking for a solid effort out of that line of scrimmage. And then defensively, I think we'll see a physical defense. Outside of K Moss, we just kind of we've got a lot of question marks at Etowah right now.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, excited to see what they do. Their first game is against Woodstock, Battle of Town Lake. Couldn't be a bigger game to introduce yourself as the lead man at Etowah for Coach Vavra and his staff. And that game, it's kind of one that you throw out what you know about it, because we've seen some crazy things happen at the Battle of Town Lake. So we'll definitely keep our attention on that one. I do believe that is the North Georgia Sports Network game of the week.
It is.
How that works for anybody that's wondering what our game of the weeks look like. There's not a broadcast this year since we're split up as a group, but we are still going to do some in-depth coverage. There's going to be video content on players. There's going to be write-ups. There's going to be a lot of in-depth stuff. So we will definitely keep our eye on the Battle of Town Lake very closely.
Absolutely, can't wait. Can't wait to see this 2025 edition of the Etowah Eagles.
All right, Art, and that takes us right into the Sequoia Chiefs, who are coming off of a quarterfinal appearance. Obviously, as we talk about some county programs, when we talk about some of the great runs that we've seen in Cherokee County, you think about 2018 Creekview, 2018 Sequoia as well, 2020 River Ridge, 2014 Etowah. The one thing that I think is different about this Sequoia team compared to some of those teams that we talk about is that those teams were, I don't want to say one and done, but they kind of were, right? You kind of had that peak and then graduations and all of that. when you look at this Sequoia team, they're bringing a ton back. You've got Colby Martin, Will Rejecki, the offensive line with Brewer, Brody Craig. These guys are all going to play college ball. Colby Martin committed to play baseball at Georgia Tech, but these are all very talented athletes that we're seeing return for this Sequoia team. So I guess if you want to know something that I've been thinking about, and I've kind of mentioned this for the other teams that have to learn how to win and how have to learn not to lose. This is a Sequoia team that already knows how to do that. So the question for them is how you fill those gaps and where you take advantage of what needs to happen week in and week out so that they can put together another complete season like they have really for the last 2-3 seasons.
Yeah, Coop, again, you mentioned the level of success and sustained success over these past few years for Coach Teeter. And really, I think a lot of it has been the ability to plug and play with different pieces. And certainly, you need your Division I prospects, you need your Hancocks, you need your Mariahs, you need a guy like Alex Brewer or a running back like Will Rejecki, or a safety like Bretton Darling to kind of help bridge the gap. So they've done a great job of taking some of these senior classes and cultivating them, and then integrating some of these younger groups. Colby Martin, had it not been for injury, we might just now be knowing his name last season. But this is a 4-year starter. Didn't start every game his freshman year, but now it becomes a 4-year starter to go along with some younger guys that have come along. And this senior class has been doing this for a long time. Alex Brewer, been one of the top offensive linemen, probably one of the top offensive linemen last year. Now, like you said, you pair him with Brody Craig, excuse me. And now you've got two of the best tackles in the county, maybe in North Georgia, on that offensive line to help pave the way for Will Rejecki. So very established group of players, group of coaches. And again, Coop, this is a run we have the likes I feel like we haven't seen probably since in the early 2000s with Coach Dameron and Cherokee. And that's been, again, that's likely been 20 years or so since we've seen a run like that. And when you get to be my age and you're talking about 20 years ago and you're like, oh, that was 2005. That was only, yesterday. But yeah, 20 years ago since I think we've really seen something like this to a level of sustainability that's been so impressive for the Sequoia Chiefs.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's on both sides of the ball, even. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is that, yes, there are more questions on defense than offense. But, kind of taking a look at some of their stats from last year, Michael Fountain coming back, Drew Williams coming back, Carson Berhe's coming back, Matthew Matt's coming back. These are all guys that had a huge impact last year on that defensive side that they're going to be coming back. And I think when you talk to coaches, one thing that I found is that it's not so much the fact that you have, 4 returners in the linebacking core. That's always great. But if you have a returner at those individual levels, they're in those meetings, right? They're in the defensive back room. They're in the linebacking room. They're in the defensive line room. And they add a level of continuity to the coaching staff and helping those younger guys progress and get to where they need to get. So I think for Sequoia, they're really primed. Of course, there's a few caveats. It's nothing's ever given, but there's a really, really good opportunity for Sequoia to put their name right there with some of these great teams that we're talking about and, really have one of the most historic runs over a 4-year period that we've seen out of a program in a long time.
Yeah, it would be, it has the potential, as you mentioned, Coop, to shape up to be a historic season. You talk about bringing back a quarterback who passed for over 2,300 yards, 2,300 yards, only threw 3 interceptions, a running back who's well over the 1,600-yard mark, a receiver who was just shy of 1,000 yards last year. So from a core offensive production standpoint, you certainly do return the weapons. Maddox Waller, also a guy we saw come on in some spots at receiver, the receiver position. So a lot of potential, and that's something we want to kind of talk to Coach Teeter about when we talk to him. Is like, hey, one, how do you maintain your focus? This is almost a unseen level of sustained success in the county. And how do you keep the focus and take the next step? And we talked about this off the air. I'll go ahead and interject this into this section and this section here we're talking about before we talked to Coach Teeter. But by the way, the region matchups this year are Region 6 and Region 2. And for anybody who doesn't know, that's Coffee. Coffee's Region 2. So you've got Lee County, Coffee, Houston County, Northside Warner Robins, Veterans High School. So you've got that region down there, perennial Central, South Georgia, hard-nosed football region coming up here that we'll be matching up with. So there's no guarantee that teams 2, 3, and 4 in our region would make it past the first round this year. So I think it's almost an imperative that you get make the most out of your region play and get that number 1 seed, and then we'll see where the chips fall. Certainly, getting to the playoffs is a first step for the Chiefs, or getting back to the playoffs. As they've shown they've been capable to do over the last few seasons. But man, that's when that region seeding becomes so important. And when you have a team with so much experience, you kind of you like to think they've been there, done that. They won't be falling into those pitfalls, like you said, knowing how to win, knowing how not to lose, those kind of things.
Yeah, and absolutely right. And you mentioned Coach Teeter actually in the queue right now. Let's go ahead and bring him up. So thank you for joining us on the North Georgia Sports Report podcast. And joining us now is the head coach of the Sequoia Chiefs, Coach Teeter. Coach, thank you for being back with us.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see you guys again.
Absolutely, Coach. Always look forward to it. And obviously, after coming off of last season, excited to talk about the Chiefs this year. As we kind of did some of our preseason prep work, looking back on the season, we obviously view it as a successful year. I want to get your take on it, though. What did you learn in 2024? And did you learn anything that you're kind of taking with you to 2025 and some expectations for this year?
Learned it was a long season. It was fun. I mean, it was great to be a part of everything. It's probably one of the better seasons we've had there in a long, long time. You learn a lot about your kids, but the thing is, it's, as we talk to the kids a lot about, it's not the same team. We're minus some people. We don't have any in Mariah. We don't have some people in the secondary that we had. So even though you were so successful and we do have some kids coming back, there's still a lot of things yet to learn about this team. I mean, what we did was some things with our offense that I think we can take with us. I think there's some things that Coach Buddy did defensively that hopefully he can bring with him with the group he's got. But everything changes once that last coffee game ended and you lose the people we lost, because we lost some very, very key people. So even though we may have learned a few things, it's growing with this group and where their chemistry work together, and how will it go as we battle through this season.
Coach, certainly congratulations on a fantastic season last year. We had a chance to talk offline back in the spring to one of your offensive linemen, Alex Brewer. And a question I had for Alex was, hey, as a young man, what's your biggest challenge this year coming into your senior season? His comment was fighting complacency. Have you seen that, or has it been a message that you all have been preaching in the off season, or is that organically defined by these seniors that have had a ton of success over their high school career? What does that look like to fight complacency for your team, and how do you get the young guys who are stepping into key roles to step into that role and take on that mindset of fighting complacency?
Well, what it does shows Alex has paid a lot of attention, because Coach Buddy and I pretty much preach that every day to them. We just came back from a camp in Putnam where we spent 3 days, and in the evenings we sit around under a pavilion and we kind of have a little heart about a lot of this stuff. And that was my message to them, was being able to fight the complacency, because this group, unlike most groups that's came through, has had nothing but success. Went to the first round as some of the freshmen, then second round the next year, and then third round last year. And so they've done nothing but win. We even spoke a lot about this Friday night when we played Gilmer, that is the challenge for them all year long. Can they handle it and do things the way they're supposed to? How do you get them to see it and get them to understand, especially the young kids? I think the young kids who haven't yet been a part or didn't play much, more so your sophomores and any new juniors or seniors we got, the other guys have to lead that example in practice. And so far they've done a great job of that, especially over the summer and over the spring. But we're still young and it's still early. So we're going to find out here in a few weeks with the schedule we have for our non-region schedule, that whether we can fight that complacency or not, because it's not just through the first game or the second game. We've talked a lot about at Putnam how we kind of break our season down into 3 different groups. We've got the non-region opponents who want to try to find a way to knock you off, and a couple of those who didn't think you should have beat them last year. And then we got the group of Cherokee County schools who want to be somebody who can knock you off. And then the other fight is just our region trying to get through it with the Sprayberries and Riverwoods and all those other schools. So it's going to be tough, but our job as coaches, I feel, is to find a way to keep reminding them of what their goal is and what they're working towards. And really, I'll be honest with you, that's for us is kind of an everyday job, because if you let it go one day, then it can kind of go south if you're not careful.
Yeah, and Coach, kind of adding on to that complacency point, it's very rare in Cherokee County, and I would say just across high school football, that you have so many key pieces returning year over year. And obviously, guys like Ian Mariah, will be missed greatly, for his production, Tewo Gundale on defense as well. But, when you look at Colby Martin, Will Rajecki, Brewer, some of these guys that we've seen and got to know over the last couple of years, outside of the complacency, do you find that experience has been different for you as a coach? I know you've been coaching at Sequoia for a long time and as a head coach for a while. Is there something different about this group than any other group you've had, or is it kind of the same story, just going through the motions to try and get things right like it's a new group of players?
No, the experience has helped us a ton, especially offensively. Brent lost quite a few people defensively, but offensively, it's allowed us to experiment with some things in the spring, over the summer, to maybe advance a little bit more of what we're doing offensively. And then just having for no other word, I guess, the comfortness of having Colby still doing this, having Will still play the running back, and having our line be solid, that you only have to replace maybe 1, maybe 2 to kind of get it back where it was a year ago. So the experience-wise, this has helped a ton. What we're missing right now is that Tewo Gundale. Drew Williams has stepped up and has kind of taken that role on and has done a great job with it. But Michael Fountain's new at the other linebacker. So can he do as well as Drew did a year ago? That's still yet to be seen. And then right now we're missing probably that leader in the secondary that kind of keeps things going, more so like Jackson and Britton Darling did 2 years ago, and kind of how Spencer kind of fell into that role last year. So as good as it is of having the pieces back, I still think the challenge for us is those pieces that are replacing and getting them caught up with everybody else.
Coach, I feel like we can ask about your offensive group, your defensive group, and we can probably just replay a podcast from last season, because I feel like you do have at least a lot of the production back, outside of guys like you mentioned, like Tewu and Ian and other guys back there. Defensively, you touched on this about Coach Buddy missing a lot, but also felt like Coach Buddy did a lot with not a lot of experience last season. On the defensive side of the ball, is the challenge greater this year than last year, or what is your expectation out of that group? And I thought they were able to gel really fast last year. Do you see the same things early in the preseason, or and not to put Coach Buddy on the spot already before we even get started, but I had to.
The expectation is for them to be better than last year. That's always the expectation. Are they still doing some things that we thought we'd be a little further than? Yeah. Last week's hard to tell because Gilmer runs such a total different offense, which is kind of like us speaking years ago. But so that's the only thing. We come out of the game a little bit unsure where we were defensively just because of what they did. We've seen tremendous growth from the first day of spring practice to the spring game. And then for me, I kind of go to the next event, which was a couple of 7-on-7s, then a contact camp. For everything we've done, we've gained growth. We've had a couple of people dinged up here and there, so we've actually built some depth on some of those. It's just, his expectation is they better be perfect. And are we living up to that? No, because we're still in the preseason right now. But I think they're going to get there. He seemed to have been able to do this year in, year out, because if you kind of notice, especially the last 3 years, we've usually lost more defense than we have on offense. So he's done a great job with it. He's got a really good staff who I know are working hard to to get things the way it needs to be. And we'll find out next week when we go against Denmark.
Coach, before we wrap up our time with you today, I know you spend a ton of your time talking to us about your players, offense, defense, special teams. But I was doing some homework and prep work, and maybe you'll correct me if I'm wrong here. You are, I believe, 2 wins away from the all-time leading Sequoia, in all-time victories as a head coach, and additionally, you are 4 wins away from 100 wins at Sequoia. When you look back on your career, do you feel like you've been doing it long enough or that long to even amass that amount of wins? And what are some of the most memorable moments kind of up through this season? And I know I don't want to. You've been doing this at least at Sequoia for 15 years. I believe this is 24 overall in Georgia. What do you? I guess what advice maybe, or what are some of the highlights, or what do you pass on to some of your younger coaches on your staff being able to do this for this long and have this amount of success?
It just shows I'm old as dirt. You know? It's now going on 17 years at Sequoia. So it's meant a lot. I mean, there's a lot of great moments. I mean, the first year I was there, with some of those players, Dominic Swope, Dalton Trevino, Brandon Alexander, some of those kids mean a lot because, here I am a new coach and they've got to work for somebody different and do things totally different than what they did with Coach Maxwell. 18 was very special with Collier Payton, all them. And most people won't think, but with Brandon and Ingleton and that group who finished 7-4, but was the first team that went to the playoffs for us and kind of got the run going for us. So there's a ton of things. Jackson's group was awesome. So you look down, because I had to ask the same question from the newspaper. You're trying to not forget somebody because somebody get their feelings hurt, but it's just been a ton of things. What would I tell most of my young coaches is there's a lot of work that goes into this, and most people don't see behind the scenes all the stuff you do and how many hours you put into this. And if you want to be successful, you got to do those things. We've got a great staff right now. I've always had really good coaches, but I feel like we got a great group right now that really works good together and really just likes being together. We had all the coaches at our house the other day, and we had 40 some people here. And I think that means a lot, being able to build a staff that kids can trust and put their faith into, and they've worked really hard. But it's been good. It's been great. Same thing I told the newspaper. It is about me, and I don't want all the attention. I'd rather it go to the kids because, it's because of them why we're successful.
Well, Coach, I wouldn't expect you to say anything else about it not being about you, but we'd be remiss. One, it's been a pleasure. You allowing us a peek into the Sequoia program. You've been very gracious with your time and as long as with your staff and your players. And it's as a person who's been in the community, I guess almost as long as you have here, it's been exciting to watch you over these last 17, 18 years and what you've been able to do at Sequoia. So I did want to, I don't know whenever you plan to hang it up. You said you're old as dirt. Maybe some of the other coaches in the county hope you hang it up sooner rather than later. But man, we love seeing you stick around for as long as you can, and we're looking forward for another deep run for the Chiefs this season for sure.
Guys, I appreciate everything y'all do, and I appreciate you being around, and I just appreciate what you do for the high school football here in Cherokee County. It means a lot, probably not just to me, but to the kids and everybody, all the other coaches that do this.
Well, thank you so much, Coach. You've got a big one against Denmark coming up here in about a week and a half. We wish you the best of luck then, and we will certainly be keeping tabs on the Sequoia Chiefs, and we look forward to having you back on the podcast later on this season.
Thank you. I appreciate everything.
So a special thank you to Coach Teeter for joining us once again here on the podcast. First time seeing in a live video format. How fun is that?
That was great. It's always good to talk to Coach Teeter. It's always good to see him out on the field pregame to talk to him. It's great to see him out in the community, and now we've got him on the podcast live on video. So we thank him and Coop. The numbers. I almost didn't realize it slipped at how close he is to making this a historic season, not just for Sequoia, but for him professionally. And of course, as a consummate professional, he's like, hey, this is not about me. It's about my coaches and about my players. And that's what you would expect out of a coach with his tenure, his years of experience. And man, what a fantastic opportunity that lies in front of the Sequoia Chiefs this season.
No, absolutely. And as we take a look at their schedule and what they have, he mentioned that out of region schedule is no joke, and it certainly isn't. You know, Denmark, Cherokee, and Kell are the three teams that they'll face out of region, and there's some tough customers in there. I mean, obviously, you know, Kell is really kind of planted themselves as a leader. I believe they're in 4A. You know, they're a leader in that group as far as, you know, top 10 ratings. We see them pretty consistently. Cherokee playing in the highest classification. We'll talk to Coach Holly later. You know, I think that this is something that when we look at with Cherokee, they can present some unique challenges. And then Denmark, again, highest classification. You know, that was a game last year that I think for us fans, you know, they won that by a field goal. And we were kind of looking around like, what happened to Sequoia? You know, because we were expecting, you know, bigger things than that. But obviously, you know, a win is a win. And that's take what you can get. So a lot of challenges there. And then, you know, jumping into the region schedule, they have Riverwood to start, which is, again, no you know, offense to Riverwood, but if you're talking about the upper echelon of who you think is going to be in the region to start the year, Riverwood's probably not in there. They do have to face Sprayberry pretty early. That's a September 12th game for them. They do get that at Skip Pope this year, which is much better than having to travel down to Marietta. And obviously Coach Vavra's not at Sprayberry anymore, so hopefully the fortunes will turn for Cherokee County teams because it hasn't been good against Sprayberry of late. And then Lassiter, and then Woodstock, River Ridge, Pope, and Creekview round out the rest of it. So tough. There's some tough sledding in there, especially that last 4-game stretch. Woodstock, River Ridge, Pope, and Creekview. That is a tough slate.
Yeah, it is, Coop. No easy weeks off at all, really, for the Sequoia Chiefs. You mentioned the pre-region schedule. You know, circle that 829 Kell game. They've got a lot coming back over there at Kell. That's a game that Sequoia went into the Stockyard, I think they call it over there at Kell, and won a game last season that kind of propelled them into, you know, a great second half. I think certainly that Sprayberry game is one that I'll be interested in. You know, if I'm just looking at the way the region sets up, not that we can take any of these teams for granted. I think the winner of that game is probably the leader in the clubhouse early. So that's an important game for certainly both of those teams. But as we focus on Sequoia, certainly maybe an opportunity to exact a little revenge. Sprayberry still has Jaden Duckett that nobody can tackle in a phone booth. But a new coaching staff, and as we we'll talk to Coach Vavra, you know, he's brought some of his old guys over with him. So what we have seen from Sprayberry the last few years might be something completely different with the new coaching staff over there. So that's certainly a wild card. We'll be keeping our eye on that. But yeah, Coop, again, I think if you get through that Sprayberry game, not that it's easy sledding, but you set yourself up well. It doesn't get any easier. You got to go to River Ridge the following week. So that could be a trap game for Sequoia. Last year we talked about has been improved. Woodstock certainly much improved, maybe the most improved team in the region year over year, going from the 2 years ago to last year. And then Pope, and then the Creekview game is never easy. You know, I think all the ratings showed Sequoia a large, heavy favorite over Creekview last season. Creekview was in that ball game to the very end. So rivalry games, you just, you know, it's anything can happen. So nothing is set in stone for this Sequoia Chief team. And I think that battle of complacency that Coach Teeter talked about, how they're fighting that, is going to be very key to their success in games that they'll probably be favored in. The majority of their games this season, that 7 out of the 10, maybe 8 out of the 10 could be. It could be favored, could be 9, depending on who you ask. But they've got to be able to battle that complacency, and we'll see. Nobody's going to handle it. We know that, and I think there's a lot of people that are probably getting tired of us talking about how Sequoia hasn't been beaten in the county in, you know, X amount of years or X amount of games. We'll bring that back next week. We'll talk about that when we get into our regularly scheduled programming. But this has been the creme de la creme of Cherokee County football over the past 3+ seasons.
Yeah, it has, and I always remind people, Sprayberry lost to Pope last year. If you talk about complacency and just things happen on Friday nights that you look up and scratch your head, there you go. that was one that we got to the end of the year and it's like Sprayberry. Wait, they had a loss in region. Oh yeah, to Pope. So
Yeah,
anything can happen.
It's a head scratcher, but you're right. Anything can happen, Coop.
Absolutely. Well, that's our take on the Sequoia Chiefs. We'll move right into the Woodstock Wolverines since we talked about them and being that new upstart program. Talking about Woodstock, there's a lot to like about the Wolverines right now. First of all, I think the biggest thing that you have to take away from what they did last year is they found a way to win and they found a way to not lose, right? That's what we keep talking about. They have finally turned that corner, I think, as a program where they're doing the simple things right and they're doing the complex things right as well. So for Woodstock this year, I think I don't want to say that it's as exciting as some of the other teams we've seen in the county in recent years, but I feel like they're in a position to surprise a lot of people. I think that they're going to be improved over last year. We talk about Graham Burmeister, in the offseason picked up an FBS offer from Miami of Ohio. I think that as we see him progress through the year, we're going to see him pick up more offers. And I think when you look at the rest of their team, people forget this. Burmeister ran for real close to 500 yards last year. Okay. This is a guy that can do it both. And I think that's going to be a big deal. They're obviously losing Isaiah Payton. He was a 1,000-yard rusher last year. That's hard to replace. And the receiving core is going to look a lot different because they graduated, I believe, their top 4 receivers from last year. So all of that being said, a couple of good things. The offensive line has some good experience coming back. And defensively, they are replacing Cooper Price and Drew Burmeister, the older brother of Graham Burmeister. But across the board, there's some good experience at those individual levels for the Wolverines. So I think as you kind of look at it from a 1,000-yard view, there's a lot to like about what we've seen out of Woodstock last year and what they're bringing back this year.
Absolutely, Coop. It starts with the quarterback. Look, over 2,000 yards passing for a guy that didn't start a varsity game the year prior. That's very impressive for Graham Burmeister. And then you mentioned his ability not only to beat you with his arm, but his legs. And I do recall Coach Devine telling us, coming into last season, hey, we've got a young guy. He's a crafty lefty. And we're kind of taking a peek at him, having a chance to watch him play. You've had a chance to watch him play a couple of times. I had a chance to watch him play. Just a very cerebral, seems like he has control over the offense and going into his junior season. I think that's the other thing that we forget is like, man, we got another young quarterback who has an opportunity to be off and make a name for himself and maybe end up playing in college one day, a la what we've seen with seen like with the likes of Tanner Savisir last year going to play college ball at Berry, and then certainly with Colby Martin certainly going to play baseball, probably could play college football if he wanted to. And now Burmeister seems to be the next quarterback in line in the county to kind of take the reins or to compete as one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the county. I'm curious to see how these young receivers step into their new roles because that's a lot of production to fill, as you mentioned. And then on the defensive side of the ball, we've seen, a secondary that's kind of growing up where you've got some guys that we've talked about them over the last couple of seasons, but Trace Washington, Tyler Barbera, Paul Measy, Tyler Howard, some names that so we'll be certain to ask Coach Devine about, but there's enough coming back for these Woodstock Wolverines to not be worried about all the production they lost. And they lost a lot of production at the linebacker spot and the receiver spot, but I think they have enough coming back to help these young guys come up while these young guys are learning on the fly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as you mentioned, we do have Coach Devine calling in. Let's go ahead and see what he has to say about this new group that we'll see this year. So joining us now on the North Georgia Sports Report podcast, the head coach for the Woodstock Wolverines, Coach Dan Devine. Coach, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Glad to be back.
Absolutely, Coach. Always look forward to it, and especially excited to talk about Woodstock after the year that you guys had last year. I think I speak for Art and probably all of the fans of Cherokee County as a whole when I say it's so good to see Woodstock as a program come back. And, just want to brag for a second on this because I had the opportunity to go out to Woodstock a couple times last year for a couple of year games, and the atmosphere from that last year to a couple of years ago was day and night different. Just from the students bought in, you can tell there's a lot of excitement around the community and the program. So I want to ask about that to kind of start it off. Kind of moving into Woodstock now, moving out of the new coach realm into the more experienced coach in Cherokee County. What have you seen over your time in Woodstock, and what do you feel like, if anything, but what do you feel like's changed for you guys that's allowed you to be a team that people are excited to watch, and things have really turned around for that program?
Yeah, well, thank you for the kind words, first of all. It means a lot. And I think, we got here 3 years ago trying to build a culture and a program and get Woodstock, back to being Woodstock. I remember the days of Coach O and Coach Buddy making it, Woodstock is a reputable, respected program. And that was, one of my goals getting here. And I like to think we're on the way to do that. And I think expectation now is a good thing, to have, as I tell my players, and going into a year after we had last year is just helps you prepare and get better every day, from it. But I mean, that was the expectation of what I had coming in, and I say me and my staff. And it's really, to your point about community, it goes beyond that. It goes to our booster club, to our admin and our school, just being on one page and being and going in one direction and getting our program where really it should be. I remember the days of the rival of down the street, which will open and being, really, 5, 6, 7,000 people and just unbelievable nights and Friday nights. And that's where we wanted it to be. And we're getting there. We're not there yet. But we're building it. And I think we're taking steps in the right direction to do that.
Coach, you talked about taking steps in the right direction, and last year, unbelievable. You had a 1,000-yard rusher, 2,000-yard passer, a guy at quarterback who returns now with some playoff experience. You talked about taking the next step. What is the next step for Woodstock football in this upcoming season, and who give us just especially on the offensive side of the ball, you lose your top 2 or 3 receivers. Who are some of the names that we can look out for that we'll see Mr. Burmeister be tossing the rock to this season?
Yeah, like you said, with us, Isaiah Payton, who's not playing it down the street at Reinhardt, which is a big loss, obviously. But, Graham coming back, now getting a 3 years in Coach Justin Pierce's offense, which is awesome. And now knowing the same vocabulary and lingo, he's also 25 pounds heavier, and kind of rocked up there. So he had a really good offseason and throwing it as well as he does. And, so we got, Rylan Hubbard, who's a returner for us, who played corner for us last year, actually. Tied for the region in interceptions. We're going to put him on the other side of the ball, play both, is another big one. We had a basketball player come out for us named Jordan Foster, about 6'4", 6'5", 240-pound forward for a basketball team, and decided to come out. So that's a great target. We're looking forward to him. And we have a plethora of running backs that we're going to put back there. Khalil Anderson, Xavier Murphy is going to be he's a track kid and can fly, can be a weapon for us too. And Trace Washington will be carrying the ball a little bit for us on both sides of the ball as well. So, Coach Pierce does a great job on that side of getting our athletes the ball, and another year in the system. I'm really looking forward to watching it.
Yeah, Coach, and talking about the defensive side of the ball for a minute, obviously a couple of big losses in Cooper Price and Drew Burmeister. Both guys racked up over 100 tackles last season. As you kind of turn the page to this season, it's I think your program in particular, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it seems like you have enough experience in each level of your defense that there's not going to be one group that's just all new. There's people coming back that can help kind of solidify that as the newcomers get up to speed. What have you seen from the leadership from some of those returners, and maybe some steps forward from some of the new guys that we're going to see this year?
Yeah, for sure. I think I'll start on the back end because that's, our most important. That kind of ends with it. every play, whether it's a run or a pass. And our two safeties are special. Tyler Barbera is our field safety. He's a Division I safety, and Danny Palmese was an all-region safety as well for us. So those two guys coming back, they're just so, cerebral and really smart, all AP kids, and way smarter than I am sometimes, for sure when it comes to football stuff. But having those guys on the back end really help. And anytime you want to build a defense, you build it middle out, So I think we bring Carter Clay back, who's also our starting guard, but also played nose for us last year as well at points. And then, really can't replace 110 tackles each with Drew and Coop. That's just, massive production. But Tyler Howard's going to step into that role at will linebacker as well. Trace, obviously, in the defensive side of the ball, comes back, and he's an absolute, freak when he gets going in the right direction. So to your point, we bring back a lot of good pieces. We still got guys learning that side of the ball, but again, with Coach Price's defense now in the third year, I think everybody's just similar in vocabulary, knowing where they have to be and playing a lot faster, which is really good.
Coach, we touched a little bit about your success last season, making it the first round of the playoffs, and certainly being matched up against the eventual state champ was not an easy road to hoe. In terms of expectations for you, for this group, maybe not wins or losses, or maybe not even a playoff berth, what is your expectation from the 2025 version of the Woodstock Wolverines this season?
Yeah, I think after a postseason berth last year, kids want to jump around. This elephant in the room is, hey, we're a postseason team. That's the expectation. I think that's the expectation of me going in, and it's a great region. We had two quarterfinal teams. We have, I think, 3 top 10 teams in 5A in our region. So it's a really tough competitive region, but I think what we built over the last few years is that we can compete, with anybody we step foot in, on a football field. And that's really the expectation, that first year, I think some weeks you go in and you realize, okay, we just want to really play hard at this point, but now it's about competing. It's about staying in games and even winning some games maybe you shouldn't. That's really the expectation of me and my staff. I tell my staff too, I'm really hard on them, but that's getting our guys prepared for a good run, and we'll see what happens.
Well, Coach, those are all the questions we had for you. As again, you talk about you're not as smart as maybe some of your safeties, but extremely astute, and you wouldn't be where you were if you didn't know what you were talking about. So, if I can speak for Will, thanks for joining us, and thanks for really being a friend of our program over the past 3 seasons, and it's just been exciting to watch you all. I feel like you've come leaps and bounds, at least as a spectator, over these last 2 years, and then certainly making it to playoffs. And I think that pivotal game, beating Creekview on that Saturday, just exciting to watch your guys compete and pull that off. And then, like you mentioned, make a run into the state tournament. We wish you the best of success. I know it doesn't get easier, because I feel like at this point you're going from the hunter to the hunted a little bit at this point. What does that feel like, Coach? Is that differently from when you first got to Woodstock 3 seasons ago?
Yeah, for sure. I think that, again, it goes to expectation, right? I think that's what it's about. We tell our kids pressure's a privilege, and I think going into week to week, and people are trying to beat you now, knowing that they're not going to run over you, So I think that's a great thing, and that's something we've built and we're proud of. But we're still not there. We obviously have to take the next steps, and to become a championship level team, there's more steps you got to take, to get there. So we're excited that we're building it. I'm proud of all our guys, and I truly thank you guys for having us and marketing us. It's been a great relationship, and I can't wait to continue it this season.
Well, thank you so much, Coach. Again, we do appreciate you. We wish you the best of luck. Next Friday, the 15th, you will be taking on that team down the street, as you mentioned, and one of the greatest rivalries in the county, as you guys, I believe, will be on the road this season down there in Town Lake. So we wish you the best of luck this season, Coach, and we look forward to talking to you later on this season.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. Have a great night.
And a special thank you to Coach Devine for being with us once again on the podcast. One thing that really jumped out to me is I think he doesn't lose that intensity, Right. It's something that's consistent with him since we talked to him a couple years ago for the first time. He just felt like it was a guy that you wanted to play for, and I still feel that way. He just has an incredible way of motivating people, and I think he does a really good job of lifting his players up. And I think that he's somebody that has done a fantastic job. Obviously, the results are showing on the field. And, one thing that we talked to him about last year was that they were kind of tired of facing some of the teams that they had to face. And that takes us into our schedule, where their out of region schedule is, I don't want to say easy. There's no such thing as easy in football. But it's certainly not like some of the other ones we've gone over. They do start with the Battle of Town Lake. It's one of the biggest rivalries in Cherokee County, if not the biggest. Anything can happen. But then they'll play Woodland out of Cartersville, and then they play North Springs. And those are two teams that have had some really big struggles as of late.
Yeah, Coop, and I think that was one of the things that when we even talked to Coach Devine about scheduling, I think his first season he faced kind of a murderer's row, and he was like, wait a minute, at minimum we've got to have opportunities for us to compete with either light competition, or not that we want to go down and just bludgeon somebody, but hey, we've got to make sure that our guys are getting the right reps against the right guys, so we can bring this thing along like we want. And they have, as you know, most games are on a 2-year contract, so they'll have, as you mentioned, the Woodland Cartersvilles who have struggled as of late, and the North Springs who have had their own issues, and nonetheless, those will be a great tune-up for their region schedule, and hopefully you come out of those games, get your guys some reps, come out of those games with everybody healthy. And man, I tell you, you jump into it on September 5th when they start region play at home against River Ridge. And Coop, they've got 6 home games this season for the Woodstock Wolverines. I think that North Springs game was not a return game, so they'll be at home against North Springs, at least the schedule I'm looking at. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But River Ridge at home will be a big one. That's kind of the, we say the Battle of Town Lake is Etowah, Woodstock. This is kind of the Battle of Arnold Mill Road, where River Ridge sits on the eastern side of the county, and Woodstock sits, or eastern side of Woodstock, and Woodstock sits on the western side of Woodstock. And a huge game, as we expect for those two teams to be competing for a playoff spot. And as Coach Devine mentioned, hey, we've got to continue to stack these days, and all right, great, we made it to the playoffs. Like, what's our next step? How can we continue to ramp this thing up and be a championship caliber program, as he mentioned? And I think we kind of, sometimes that gets lost. Yeah, a championship caliber program doesn't necessarily have to be competing for a state title every year in the championship game. But I think what he means is, hey, we're getting there to be a region champ. We're making a deep run of the playoffs, and not to put words in his mouth, but I think a program that is respected and feared and has a measured level of success on and off the field week in and week out. And I think that's the direction that Woodstock is moving in. We'll see if they can, again, similar to Sequoia, avoid complacency of, okay, we finally got over the hump, we're back in the playoffs. But again, you got to think last year will be improved. They'll get Creekview at home, but you got to think Creekview's probably got, saying, hey, that's a game we let slip away from them last year. So it'll be interesting. There's no easy week really for any of these teams in Region 6 5A. And Woodstock is not the same. But I tell you what, like I mentioned, that first region game against River Ridge should set the tone for these teams. And we'll see how much closer, how much far away, where Woodstock is compared to last year.
Yeah, and to your point about the home and away splits, they get Creekview, Sequoia, Sprayberry, and River Ridge at home this year. That's the 4 toughest opponents as we sit here in the preseason. You get them all at home at the Woodshed. So that's a really, really fortunate, I don't want to say fortunate, but it is. I mean, it's a good way the schedule lined up. Obviously, they had those games on the road last year. So I'm excited to see what Woodstock can do. Again, I think that when you kind of look at some games to circle, that game against River Ridge is one. Obviously, the Battle of Town Lake circled. That's always circled whenever they play. Creekview, I think you're right. I think Creekview's going to come into that game with a chip on their shoulder, because that was an upset that I don't think anybody really saw coming especially because Creekview came in 4-1 with a win over Calhoun in that. And then obviously Sequoia and Sprayberry are the two favorites right now for that 1-2 battle. So you pull up an upset in one of those and you win the games you're supposed to win against Pope and Riverwood and Lassiter, which, by the way, how nice is it to say now that games you're supposed to win? That has to feel good for Woodstock fans. We have games we're supposed to win. But yeah, I mean, I think that you get those games at home, you win a couple of those, you win 3 of them, and you're talking about, hosting a home playoff game at the Woodshed, and that's a big deal for a Woodstock program. I think they're on a really good trajectory, and I think that the experience they picked up last year in the playoffs and through is something that's going to carry them for a long way. So Woodstock, definitely a team to watch if you haven't had them on your radar yet.
Absolutely, Coop. I couldn't have said it better. A team to watch. Pay attention. Lock in to the Woodstock Wolverines this season. If I'm the people, I'm buying stock in the Wolverines.
There you go. Me too. Buying hard. And speaking of a team that we have bought hard recently over the past few years, that is the River Ridge Knights. And that's where we'll take our next stop, as the Knights are coming off of another playoff year, right? I kind of wrote this in the preview article we put on the website. This is a team that I feel like year in and year out, they do make the playoffs. They've made the playoffs 4 out of the last 5 years. But I feel like people just kind of forget how consistent they are. It's almost like you just, oh yeah, that's River Ridge. That's River Ridge. But this is a consistent team that has done some amazing things. And, talking about picking yourself off the mat like Woodstock had done, River Ridge has done it, and they've maintained their level for a long time. Really consistent football going over down there off Arnold Mill Road. And I'll tell you, I think River Ridge this year, obviously they're going to replace some key pieces. Grant Hollier to Georgia State. We talk about the graduation of Ethan Spector, who was just, that offense was so much fun to watch last year where they were throwing the ball to. This year, I think it's probably going to have to look a little different, right? Camden Cox was a guy that had a 1,000-yard season his sophomore year, only ran for a little bit over 400 last season. I think we're going to see his production pick way back up. Micah Pugh's another guy that we've seen since he was a freshman. I think they're capable of kind of tag teaming that role and being in a really good spot at the running back spot. The offensive line returns 3 starters from last year. They're going to have some consistency up front, which is a big change for River Ridge because they haven't had that consistency up front in a while. Outside of really since the Fletcher left, which was kind of the last of that core piece. When you talk about, the Matthew Ushaks that were there, when you talk about the John Halls that were there, some really key pieces. So I think River Ridge offensively is in a really good place. Defensively, it's a mixed bag for sure. I think that the defensive line, kind of like last year, is a question again. Where does that production come from? And then the linebacking cores should be pretty good. You got Matthew Burdett returning for them. That's good. Wyatt McCarty returning. He's about as athletic of a linebacker as we've seen. And then in the secondary, they're replacing some tough guys like Revis McLaren that we saw out there that was a really good corner. And, they're going to have to replace some pieces across the board. So the defense, a bit of a question for me, but I feel like that River Ridge has the pieces, and knowing the coaching staff over there, they're going to have some consistency. I feel like they have an opportunity to put together a real good team this year.
Yeah, I agree too, Coop. One of the things we also, when we talk about River Ridge, we talk about the special teams, or I don't want to call them, just the attention to detail they have in scouting their opponents, whether it be an onside kick or whether it be a fake. I feel like that's another feather in the cap of Coach Collins and his staff. But kind of getting back to this team, this last year's team, again, 7-4 last year, 5-2 in the region, Coop. They averaged 37.3 points a game. And then defensively, as you mentioned, they got a lot of pieces to replace. Gave up 19 points a game. So numbers in a split, they're almost beating those teams by about 17, 18 points a game. But the production you're going to have to replace with a first-year starter, or first-year full-time starter, I couldn't agree more. I think you're going to see more from this running game this year with 2 proven running backs we've seen in Pugh and certainly, in Cox. Again, I think Cox under 500 yards, like you mentioned, his last season, but I think he's primed for a bounce back. I'm just interested to see how this receiving core will come along. As you mentioned, Grant Hollier, Division I receiver, who was initially Coop not even going to play football in college. He's going to play
Right.
baseball, and then
Right.
he just turned into a fantastic, phenomenal receiver. So you've got a lot of production to replace. That's not unlike any other team that we've mentioned, but I think Coach Collins has really done a great job. He and his staff have of really changing the narrative of what it means to play football at River Ridge, and we talked about in the last segment talking about being a championship type program, and he's kind of flipped the script, and now the expectation is for River Ridge to be a championship type program, whether that's making a run for the region title or making a run in the state tournament.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that one thing that has helped with that consistency is the fact that Coach Collins' staff has stayed pretty consistent outside of some coordinator departures, but outside of that, the core of that coaching staff has stayed largely the same, and it shows on the field. I feel like when you have the same language, you use the same playbook, you have the same formation sets across the board, it adds a level of consistency that these kids pick it up pretty quick. And that's the thing is Hunter Lockerman's going to step in and at the quarterback spot. I don't feel like there's going to be much of a drop off compared to the expectations. Now, numbers wise, sure. I mean, I think just the nature of the game, Ethan Spector put up some ridiculous numbers. But as far as him growing into that junior year, I think that they're going to have the ability with that offensive line and the running backs to provide him some options in the play action passing game as well. So I like what I see here early. I think there's a lot to like, and I'll tell you who can tell us more about it. It's Coach Collins. Thank you for joining us on the North Georgia Sports Report podcast, and joining us now is the head coach of the River Ridge Knights, Coach Collins. Coach, thank you for being back with us.
I'm glad to be here. It's football season. Glad to be here.
Absolutely, Coach. We always look forward to it, and especially getting to talk to you. Coach, kind of taking a look back at last season for you guys. Art and I talked about this a little bit earlier on the podcast. I feel like a lot of fans of maybe River Ridge, but Cherokee County as a whole, kind of forget that you guys have made the playoffs very consistently over the last 5 years, and obviously having to face Roswell for 2 years in a row is never fun. But, as we kind of turn our attention to this season, is there anything you learned from last season that you can take into this season as you have a new group of players coming in?
I think there's always a learning process. Each season is a season that's going to teach you a lot. And I think from last season, it was just the importance of taking it one day at a time. There was a lot of ups and downs throughout our season. And I think that the one thing we learned is this is a long season, so you can never get too high, you can never get too low. Just try to stay consistent and take it again one game at a time.
Coach, we were looking at your roster, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and we
Mhm.
know that your problem is not unlike a couple other schools in the county where you're replacing a starting quarterback who had a ton of experience with someone new. But we noticed that you've got two very experienced running backs. How is the rest of your offense shaping up this season coming into 2025, maybe versus the last few seasons we've seen? What are we going to see a little bit different out of this group?
I think you just hit the nail on the head. We do have two experienced running backs coming back. And we've got some experience on the offensive line coming back too. So we're hoping to be able to be a little bit more balanced this year than we maybe were the last couple of years. Obviously, I thought our passing attack was very very good over the last couple of years, particularly last year. But I also thought that the maybe lack of being able to run the football kind of got us in a little trouble in some of those closer games. So hopefully this year we can balance it out a little bit and establish a run game and be a little more physical on the offensive side of the ball that we feel like would help our defense and our special teams out. So obviously still want to be able to be explosive through the air, but hoping we can add that dynamic to our offense to where we can establish a run game and kind of control the line of scrimmage a little bit.
And Coach, mentioning the two running backs and Camden Cox, Micah Pugh, we also saw him on the defensive side of the ball last year have some really big games. As we kind of look at the depth chart from last year, a good mix of returners coming back. You got some pieces at each level. How are you seeing guys that we're used to calling on Friday nights? How are they helping the group that we're learning the new names of this year? How are they helping them come along? And how do you feel about the defense as a whole as you have a new group coming in?
Yeah, I think you said it. We've got some guys that's got a lot of experience. Like Wyatt McCarty's been playing a lot of football. He's a kid that's been playing for us since his freshman year. And then Burdette has also been playing since his sophomore year. Miles Leslie on and off has been playing since his sophomore year. Sam Vincent's been playing since his sophomore year. Those guys have been around for a long time. So they've kind of taken on that leadership role, kind of letting the guys know what the standard is and what the expectations are. And those newcomers are really buying into the culture that we try to establish on defense, try to make sure we get our hats to the football and try to be physical on defense. And those guys are buying into it. And it seems to be gelling very well for us.
Coach, I want to take a minute before I ask you your next question, and I want to make sure I get this in. Will, somehow last season we completely overlooked the fact that Coach Collins went over 100 victories as a head coach, which is overall. You know, he's had a couple stops at Dunwoody and Wheeler, obviously. But Coach, first of all, I want to say congratulations for that, because as I was doing my research, I said, how in the world did I miss this and did not put him on the spot with that? So first, congratulations on that. If I can ask this question to you, what has been the secret or key to your success over your coaching tenure here as you enter in? Let me see if I can get my math right here real quick. I believe this is year 21 or 22 if I'm not mistaken. Forgive me if I'm off by a year or so. But over that tenure, what's been your key to success?
First of all, I'm okay with you forgetting that, Art, because that might be like a slick way of you telling me how old I am, I think.
Well, here's what it is, Coach. I feel like I still have a little more gray in my beard than you do, so I don't want to. I'm trying to bring you down to my level or something like that.
Trying to make sure you age me is what you're doing. No, but seriously, I really do appreciate that. And I think it's an easy answer for me. It's I've been really fortunate to have some really good folks around me throughout my career, and it's been a humbling ride for me, and that goes from the players that I've been able to coach, not just as a head coach, but as an assistant as well, and the great coaches that I've had to coach under me and with me, alongside of me, and the administration that I've had to give me the support that they've given me in the community and boosters. Just been really fortunate. I think just great timing to be around great folks at all of my stops. And River Ridge has definitely not been any exception to that, man. It's just wonderful folks from top to bottom that I've just been fortunate enough to surround myself with. And again, but the main thing, it goes back to players. Just good timing and having some really good ball players that buy into the things that we're selling, and we've been fortunate enough to scratch out a couple of wins along the way, and hopefully we can continue that.
Well, Coach, you certainly have been able to like Will said earlier, you've established River Ridge as a program in this county. There's just a lot more respect, in my opinion, that goes along with this name. You guys certainly are a long way from being a doormat in any event. As you take a look back on last season and even your tenure at River Ridge, what is your expectation for this team this season? How will you define success, and maybe a key or two for that success to manifest itself?
Yeah, I think that the first thing is when you go into it, you hope you can stay healthy and get better week in and week out, day in and day out, play in and play out. And I think if we can do that, if we can continuously get better, I think we have a chance to really compete throughout the season in this really tough region. This is a group of guys, these seniors and these juniors, that we've really been waiting on for a while. We knew this was going to be a good group even when they were coming up through middle school. So hoping that we've developed them in the right way, and when the dust settles, we feel like that we've given it our best effort, and we found ourselves competing and hopefully finding an opportunity to play in that postseason. Again, this year would be phenomenal. But the most important thing is, did we get better on a daily basis, and did we maximize all our opportunities that were put before us on a daily basis?
Well said, Coach. You guys get your season kicked off in a week and a half on the 15th
Mm, yeah.
against Cherokee, your alma mater, if I'm not mistaken. Coach, that was a game that was shortened by weather last year. Is there any a special like get back you guys are looking for? Or are you just hoping that it doesn't rain next Friday night?
I don't know about get back, and that game was short, but it didn't seem like it was short because I was on the side of a pretty good thump in there for about a quarter and a half. Man, they really came out and hit us. I'll just be honest with you. There's no denying that. So it's a good game for us to play. They're doing a phenomenal job up here with these group of young men that they have up here in Canton, and we're looking forward to getting another shot at them this year, and we get them at the Ridge. I think that'll make a little bit of difference in how we come out. So hopefully we can be able to compete. It's really not about get back. It's just maybe about hopefully being able to step on the field and being a little more competitive than we felt like we were last year.
Well said, Coach. We thank you for joining us on this video and audio format. It's always good to see your face. I know we don't get out to the Ridge every week and week in and week out, but always good to see you, Coach. We wish you the best. And like you said, we hope you guys stay healthy this season and look forward to seeing another successful season for the River Ridge Knights and hopefully to continue that tradition of making that postseason.
Oh man, I really appreciate it. We appreciate all you guys do, man. It's just something I look forward to every year. Getting to talk ball with you guys, getting to talk county ball, and definitely talk River Ridge football. So thanks for all you do. I can't wait to kick this season off. I think it's going to be another great ride. Really appreciate you guys. Go Knights.
Well, thank you to Coach Collins again for joining us here, and always a pleasure to talk to Coach Collins. Always seems he's always very happy to see us, which is a nice change out of daily life.
Absolutely.
But Art, we want to take a look at the schedule. Obviously, you mentioned that first week game against Cherokee. That was a game that Dave and I called last year on the North Georgia Sports Network. That's a game that was just kind of odd. The whole way it was odd. And obviously the weather didn't help that we didn't get to see a complete version. But then followed it up with wins against Denmark, Allatoona, Woodstock, Pope, Riverwood. They rattled those off. And that's kind of the same setup this year. They'll get to host Cherokee at River Ridge at the Castle this year. They'll travel to Denmark and to Allatoona. And then like we mentioned in the Woodstock segment, they'll go to Woodstock. So there's a lot of home and away games where they're going to be on the road for a long period of time. As a matter of fact, I have them on the road from August 22nd against Denmark all the way through, and this includes bye weeks, but all the way through October the 3rd.
They will have a home game on the they will have a home game on the 19th. They'll play Sequoia right before the fall break.
Okay, yeah.
But
gotcha.
Nonetheless, through September 12th from, August 22nd, that's 4 consecutive ball games on the road.
Yeah, and it's tough sledding being on the road that long. Now, obviously, the schedule's backloaded for them where they do get to have a good bit of those home games. They're going to host Sprayberry, Sequoia, and Creekview at home. So those are the 3 major games outside of the Woodstock game that you kind of look at and say, if we can win those, or even 2 out of the 3, we're in a pretty good spot in the playoff poll. So I like where they're at, and I think the schedule lines up pretty favorably for them. Cherokee and Denmark, we talked about it with Sequoia. They kind of share those out-of-region opponents. They present some interesting dynamics for them. And then Allatoona is a team that historically does really well. Obviously, with the coaching's change since Gary Varner retired, things have changed a little bit over there. But they're going to bring a physical brand of ball. So River Ridge, I think, is going to be well battle-tested by the time they jump into that region schedule against Woodstock.
Absolutely. I think that's you hit the nail on the head when you talked about being battle-tested. An Allatoona team, I'll work backwards here, non-region, that has a fantastic running back in Xavier Rucker, who's being highly recruited. We've talked about him in the past, year over year, and so nothing changes there for the competitiveness of that ball game. The week prior to that, they'll be at Denmark on the road, a team that gave Sequoia fits last year. Just a bigger school, Class 6A school. Interesting challenge there, and of course, you'll have the Cherokee game, which, as we kind of joke with Coach Collins, hopefully we'll get to have that entire game played on Friday night. That was Coach Collins mentioned, hey, we were on the wrong side of a bad butt whipping that night, and so certainly different cast of characters at Cherokee, different cast of characters at River Ridge, as both of those teams graduate a lot of production. But man, they'll get after it right out of the gate, and it'll be interesting to see which ball club kind of can take advantage of that non-region game. And again, it's non-region, so win lose, I think you want to win that for county pride. But when the fun starts, as you mentioned, at Woodstock on September 5th. And again, we talked about that in the Woodstock segment, but I really think this is a pivotal game. No matter what happens in those first 3 weeks, this is a pivotal game for the River Ridge Knights if they're looking to maintain that playoff push that they've been able to establish over the last 4, 5, 6 years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think they're in a great spot. Really excited to see what they come out with. And again, I think that game against Cherokee to start things off, that's going to be a good measuring stick for both those programs. I don't know what it says one way or the other necessarily, since they're both kind of transitioning into new quarterbacks and new leaders on the team, but it'll be interesting to watch, and I think we're going to learn a lot about those teams pretty quickly. So excited to see what the Knights can do this year.
Absolutely.
All right, Art. Well, that takes us right into those Cherokee Warriors. And Cherokee, this is a team that we've talked about being in transition really for the last few years, I would say. Obviously, last year with the coaching staff, this year with the graduation of so many players. We talk about Tanner Savasier. I think we've talked about him, for fans of not Cherokee ad nauseum, but rightfully so. He deserves the praise. And we've talked about, the receiving core that they had last year, so many options. The passing game was electric. I think for this year, adding in some new faces. Nation Farmer transfers down from on the East Coast a little bit further north, coming down to get a little bit of that Georgia high school football experience. This is a guy that stands at about 6'4", 6'5", just under 300 pounds right now. Already has offers from Georgia Tech, Georgia. I think he's going to be a heck of a ball player, and the colleges certainly think so as well. That offensive line, I think, is going to go a complete retooling. They're going to be a little bit bigger than they were last year. And I think with the depth they have at the running back position, this is an offensive group that can really rely on the run to set up the play action pass for Sawyer Ray, who's set to take over in his sophomore year and kind of develop into that passer that we've seen from the A.J. Swans, Tanner Savasiers. Cherokee's kind of become known as the quarterback school, I guess.
Absolutely, Coop. And I think you bring up a good point when you talk about the run game and what Cherokee will likely need to do to have success this season, especially with a young quarterback who doesn't have any varsity snaps. If they can find a way to really establish that run game behind a guy like Brandon Hamilton, I think they'll be. It will help the development of that young quarterback in that young quarterback room, because right now there's just not a lot of guys with a lot of varsity snaps, if any. If I'm not mistaken, I feel like Tanner probably took every single snap his entire career when he played at Cherokee. But again, a team that you talked about losing a guy like even at running back Christian Irwin. So maybe where Brandon Hamilton was the Lightning and Irwin was a Thunder. Now you've got Brandon Hamilton maybe toting the bulk of the carries. Certainly you've got Jalen Trowers at running back and a couple other guys potentially. A lot to replace, which is why you hope that those young guys can step up and that offensive line can gel, and then those running backs can take some of the pressure off Sawyer Ray at quarterback, because the last thing you want is to have the run stuff, and then it's 3rd down and 13, and these guys the defensive linemen are going to be pinning their ears back trying to get at the quarterback and make life very uncomfortable for him. So certainly a big step. But Coop, when we look at the other side of the ball, they've lost just as much production over there.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, I mean, I think when you talk about just a team that you kind of have to throw your hands up, and I'm excited to talk to Coach here in just a minute, because you're asking me, I have no idea, and I don't think anybody really does outside of the coaching staff, because, right. Jace Carson, Brandon Knuckles, Charlie Dolan, Chase McCool, I mean, these guys are all gone. Kyan Simmons returns. That's big. And he's a heck of a ball player. We've seen that for the last couple of years moving into his senior season this year.
Actually, but a quick heads up, that's Kaysen Simmons. That's Kyan's little brother. That's returning.
Kaysen. Yes. Gotcha. Kaysen Simmons. I'm going back to 2019 over here. But yeah, excellent. And you kind of look across the board. I mean, just not a lot of production returning on either side of the ball. So, if we seem kind of short-winded here, it's kind of because we're grasping at straws until we get to talk to Coach Hawley here in a second about what is going on and right. What he's seen from his team in camp and kind of moving through the summer practices to get to the scrimmage this Friday.
Yeah, Coop, as you mentioned, maybe you talk about Brooks Adams back there on the defense side of the ball, Ute in the secondary, but really outside of that, and Simmons, we just have a lot of question marks around this defense, but a lot of opportunity again for the Cherokee Warriors in their final season at Tommy Baker Field. Coop, this is a stadium that's been around. We talk about been around for a while, 69 years. They've been playing football over there off 930 Marietta Highway, and it all comes to a close this season.
It's hard to believe. I mean, I so many good memories at Tommy Baker. I didn't even go there, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those stadiums that you kind of talk about in the classic stadiums that you have in North Georgia, and it's one of them. You know, it's one of the old style stadiums. If you haven't been out to Tommy Baker Field, okay, they're going to play River Ridge, they're going to play Sequoia, and they're going to play Etowah. I don't know which one of those is at home necessarily. I know River Ridge isn't, and Art's going to help me out here because I'm not sure.
They'll certainly get started on the road. I know they have they'll be playing. They've got 5 home games scheduled this year, and so it'll be county rival Sequoia will be at home on the 22nd of August, so week 2. Then they'll come back. They kind of on and off again there. They got Lambert and North Paulding there back to back. Wheeler at home, and then Marietta on October 24th will be the final game, home game played at Tommy Baker Field.
Well, if you haven't had a chance to go to Tommy Baker and you're in the area, you should. It's one of the best stadiums that's there. I mean, it's just a great place to go watch a ball game. With that being said, let's talk to Coach Holly and see what he has to say about the Cherokee Warriors moving into the 2025 season. And thank you for joining us on the North Georgia Sports Report podcast. And joining us now is the head coach of the Cherokee Warriors, Coach Adam Holly. Coach, thank you for being back with us.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on, guys. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely, Coach. Always look forward to talking to you. Coach, you're coming into your second year at Cherokee now. I'm going to ask you a very specific question about this. Since it was your first year last year and now you get the full off season to kind of be with your team, mesh and gel a little bit, do you see any significant differences in maybe from a personal standpoint from last year to this year? And how is that kind of helping you as a staff mesh with the kids more and get developed and ready for this 2025 season?
Yeah, I think that this team is definitely probably just a little more like us, and my vision for the program and kind of how we want to approach things and do things a certain way to a certain standard and more like the staff. But I think that that's just natural. I think that obviously we've been around these guys now a little bit longer. And that's no knock on that previous senior class because, gosh, they were loaded with talent and they were special and they were an amazing, fun group to coach. And I wish I had longer with those guys. But now that we have a new team and a new senior class, I guess just kind of our standard and how we want to do things on a daily basis. This team is kind of buying into that identity probably a little bit more, and so that that's helped in a lot of ways. But we did graduate a bunch of talent, and those guys are going to be really hard to replace. But I do think that our culture and our program is getting stronger and stronger each day.
Coach, when you say you graduated a lot of talent, I think you it almost sounds like an understatement. If we look at your, I don't know, maybe top 4, 5, 6 receivers have graduated. We said this to when we talked about Creekview. You also have a quarterback who feels like he's been at Cherokee since Moby Dick was a minnow. All kind of passing records.
Yep.
Jump on the other side of the football. Just a lot of production gone from both sides. But
yep.
Offensively, how is that unit shaping up? And we having to replace a quarterback. What does that competition look like? And who are some of the guys that are going to be stepping up for you at receiver and even along the offensive line?
Yeah, well, I think that we're going to be different, and our identity is going to be a little bit different than what we did last year. I mean, we had who I felt like, and I know I'm biased, but I felt like we had the best quarterback in the state, and in Tanner Savasier, and we had an unbelievable group of receivers that were very skilled, and so we had some weapons where we could kind of spread the field on some teams and dink and dunk and really throw the ball around, and had a lot of success with that, and and this team's just different. This is I think we are talented in our own different way. I think if there's some things we look back at last year, I don't think we were physical enough. I don't think that we were aggressive enough. I don't think that we made it a point to dominate the line of scrimmage like we should have. And I thought that that cost us in some really close games. You know, to be honest, 5 close games where we dropped 5 games by 1 score. So, you know, looking at all those things, we're a different football team, but I think that we've made changes to get us to where, all right, well, now we're going to put ourselves in position, you know, to be more physical and to be more aggressive and to dominate the line of scrimmage and really dominate the run game. And I think that if we do those things and we control the ball and we don't, you know, commit turnovers and make bad mistakes, then we're always going to be in position to win the game. And hopefully we've gotten stronger and tougher as a team that we're going to win these games down the stretch. So we are much different than last year. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you know, offense and defense wise, but I think that there's something about this group that there's some grit and some mental toughness to them that I thought that you know, hurt us at times last year down the stretch.
Coach, as you talked about the physicality on the offensive side of the ball with the run game, turning over to the defensive side, as Art mentioned, you know, as you kind of go down the list of players that we got used to calling, just so many of them seniors. You know, how has the development been on that side of the ball, and are you seeing that increased physicality on that side of the ball as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you know, Casey Simmons started inside linebacker for us last year, and we've, you know, kind of put him in a position where he can bounce around and play inside and outside and play on the line of scrimmage. Trent Barnett will be our starting Mike backer, and you know, he is very talented, and he'll be a junior, but he has really shown that, you know, he's ready for the moment. And I thought that you know, there were times last year that we probably could have played him a little bit more, but so I'm excited for him. But I think just what we're doing in practice every day, the way that we attack the weight room every day in the off season, that it's already showed up. I feel like, you know, when we go against our defense in practice, it just seems to be a much faster, aggressive, you know, attacking the ball, 11 guys rallying to the football type defense, which is what we want. And I think we got it going in the right direction.
Coach, as you enter your second season, and not only your second season, but as we were kind of talking before we recorded, you know, this is the last season at Tommy Baker Field. I know you've only been here; this is only your second year here. But what have you seen that this program, the oldest program in the county, the community, what have you seen that just from legacy of alumni that you hope to carry not only on to the end of this season, but onto the new high school after this 2025 season?
Yeah, you know, that's one thing that I'll say. I thought from the outside looking in before I came to Cherokee, that there seemed to be just with the community of Canton, and there's just an old, you know, an old town feel to it, and obviously, you know, Tommy Baker Stadium is special. There's nothing like it, and it's a special place on a Friday night to see the community come out, and it's not just parents of players, it's grandparents and it's aunts and uncles and it's cousins that all graduated from Cherokee decades ago. So it's neat, and at, you know, now that we're making this transition, you guys would be shocked to know how many people are sad and upset and disappointed to be moving to a brand new school that's going to be incredible, and the stadium and the facilities will be top notch. But it's really awesome to see just how much people love Tommy Baker, and they love this old school building that's been here since the 50s. And there's just tradition and there's history, and just so many good stories to be told. But you know, we're going to find different ways to where, you know, we might be playing in a new stadium, but our history doesn't change, and the stories are still the same, and we're still going to celebrate everything that's ever been done in Cherokee football and in Cherokee high school altogether, and take that with us to the new place. So, you know, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it, but I know that it's impossible to get the same. You know, it's not going to be Tommy Baker. I guess it's going to be impossible to replace that. But we're looking forward to it as well.
Well, Coach, you can probably throw me and a couple of my buddies into that same. And while we're not,
Yeah.
while I'm not a Cherokee alumni, certainly just the feel of that old school
Yeah.
stadium. I'll flip it over to Will. I know he's got a question for you here, and we'll carry on here.
Yeah, Coach, just one question here. So, kind of going back to some of the players that we've mentioned, since there is so much turnover, especially at Cherokee, can you give us some names? I know you mentioned, Barnett, and obviously talking about some of your running backs from last year that are returning as well. But do you have any guys that maybe us as fans aren't super familiar with yet that you think by, region play and the end of the season we'll have as names that we should have circled for the season?
Yeah, well, I think in the running back room, we feel like we're very deep, that we've got a handful of running backs that can play and are ready to play, and it starts with Brandon Hamilton. He showed flashes last year that he was electric and did some explosive plays, but he's going to obviously have much more workload this year. So Brandon Hamilton, I think, is really going to turn some heads. But just to keep in that same position group, Jelyn Trowers, is a guy that's going to go both ways for us and play linebacker and running back. And then Torrey Hearn, I think, is one that might not be on people's radars, if not yet, but just because he's young, he'll be a sophomore. But he has had an incredible offseason, and all the college coaches that come by, they're always asking, who's that kid? Who is that kid? Oh, he's just a sophomore. And so he's going to be special. And Jaden Merica is another. He'll just be a sophomore running back as well. So these are all names that we expect to have big seasons. Obviously, Sawyer Ray at quarterback has worked his tail off this offseason and has earned the respect of so many on the team, everybody on the team, and they look to him as their leader, which is what you want in your quarterback. So he's one that I know is really not, people around here are mostly familiar with him, but he's one that has grown up a lot this offseason. Jack Rubin at receiver is going to be leading that group, and I think is going to have a really good senior year. So those are the guys on offense. And then defensive, I mentioned Kason Simmons, Trenton Barnett, but Elijah Foutte at safety is electric, and I think is going to have an amazing senior year. And then I think if there's a name out there that maybe not a lot of people know, it's Zion Bob. And he has really grown up and really shown flashes that he could be a really special outside linebacker for us. So I'm excited. I mean, we're super young, but that's a good thing. And I know that's going to show its head many times, but we are super young. But I think we got a very talented young group of team here.
Coach, plenty of names to get familiar with, refamiliarize ourselves with for the Warriors. As we wrap up today, and we've asked this question of all of our coaches here, what does success look like for you in year two, as coming off of your first season and getting acclimated to a new school and a new group of players, and certainly almost like a turnover in roster, with the amount of graduation. But how do you view success this season for the Warriors?
Well, it's interesting you said that, because we talk about this as a staff often, and obviously we want to maximize what we got. We know we're not the Bufords of the world, we're not the Miltons of the world, but we just want to make sure that we are getting the absolute most out of our guys. And that's where I think when we look back at last year, we dropped some games that we shouldn't have dropped. And so I would say success this year is, let's not make the same mistakes we did last year. Like, all these one score games, let's find a way to win them instead of find a way to lose them, that I felt like we kind of did last year. And obviously, our goal every season is to get in the playoffs. And I definitely think we have a playoff football team. Now it's, like I said, the youth and the inexperience is going to show at times. There's no doubt about that. But as long as we are getting better every day, every week, and each game throughout the season, we're just getting a little bit stronger and tighter as a team, that I think that we have a playoff football team. And I would love to play some home playoff games in Tommy Baker to give it the final send off.
Coach, that would absolutely be fantastic. You all you have a scrimmage this Friday against
Yes, sir.
Creekview, but then
Yep.
get your regular season kicked off in earnest on the road against River Ridge in a game we hope gets played in its entirety this season.
Yeah, that's right.
That weather will stay
Yep.
away. But
Yep.
Coach Holly, we appreciate you making some time for us this evening.
Yes, sir.
And we certainly do wish you and the Warriors the best of luck, and we look forward to seeing you guys out and look forward to having you back on the podcast later on this season.
Yes, sir. Sounds good. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, and a special thank you to Coach Holly for being back with us. Art, always great to talk to him. He's another one of those guys that we kind of talk about with Divine. You just feel like you want to play for him. Like if
right.
if you suit up for anybody, it would be, he has a great plan involved. So wanted to jump into their schedule here with you, Art. Obviously we've talked about the region a little bit over the past few years, but looking at this schedule for them, they're kind of in the same boat as some of these other teams that really are facing a pretty big gauntlet before they even get into it. River Ridge, playoff team from last year. We've talked about Sequoia. In fact, they're a quarterfinalist in 5A. Pope was a kind of a weird team last year. And, they won that game 65-42
right.
and an offensive explosion. And then Lambert is a really good team and probably be pretty good this year. So that's all before they get into the region schedule where they're going to face North Paulding, Etowah, Wheeler, and then the last three against Walton, North Cobb, and Marietta. It's a pretty brutal schedule for them. And they also have that weird bye week at the end of their season that, depending if you get into the playoffs, can be great. But if you don't, it kind of leaves you, wanting more. So all that said, Art, what's your take on the schedule as you look at where the Warriors are?
Yeah, not an easy task playing a River Ridge and Sequoia team where you're breaking in a new quarterback, teams that like to get after you defensively. So it will be certainly baptism by fire for the young Sawyer Ray in those first couple of games. Pope loses a guy like Jonathan Stutzer, who was just a fantastic receiver, Coop, but they've got to go over to I believe that's the Dog Pound over there at Pope and play that ball game to face the Greyhounds. So maybe you come out of that first, 3 games, you pick up a win and build some confidence. Ultimately, it comes down to very similar, like we talked about with Etowah. They're going to have to find a way to beat 3 teams, and it seems to be that those games, unfortunately, the toughest 2 teams they play at Walton and at North Cobb back to back, the 2 best teams in the region, at least on paper at this point in the preseason, that's going to be a tough road to hoe. So you've got to take advantage of the opportunities you have. I know North Paulding is probably looking like they're positioned, at least in the preseason, to be that number 3 seed. But if you can knock them off, then you've got to, really got a game against Etowah that separates those 2 teams. Wheeler as well. That's been a thorn in the side recently of Cherokee County teams in the largest classification. They did get upset by Etowah last season, so that much to be seen about what Wheeler's going to be all about this year. And then the last game of the season, what a way to end Tommy Baker, your run at Tommy Baker against another historical North Georgia program, the Marietta Blue Devils, come calling. Again, Coop, you might be in a position come October 24th to play that football game and earn yourself an opportunity into the state tournament in your last season at that particular location. Now, Cherokee football's not going away; they're moving down the street, but it'll be a new stadium, so some of the nostalgia will be gone, and the memories and the echoes and the ghosts of that playing field. But man, how great would it be to see this team kind of ride off into the sunset? And anything's possible. Again, I know we talked about Walton at the upper echelon, but they lost a lot out of last season, so they're breaking in a new quarterback. And I think this region, in terms of a playoff spot, whether it be 2, 3, or 4, might be more wide open than we've seen it in a long time.
Well, and I want to go back to something Coach Holly said in the interview, talking about 1-possession games. They lost to Sequoia by 8, so technically 1 possession. They lost to Lambert by 8, technically 1 possession. They lost to Wheeler by a point. They lost to Walton by a touchdown, and they lost to Marietta by 5. They would be 9-1 if they won 1-possession games last year, right? Their one loss would be to North Cobb. So if they do turn that around, Cherokee could take a huge leap this year that nobody's really seen, happen. So I think that this is something that we should keep an eye on as we kind of watch them, especially early in the region, as if they do start winning some of those close games, because they weren't super outclassed by Wheeler, nor Walton, nor Marietta.
Yeah, you're right, Coop. And then if we take a look at just kind of the way the playoffs kind of shape out, you'll be matched up with Region 3. So that's Region 5 will match up with Region 3. So that's Campbell, Harrison, Hillgrove, McEachern, Osborne, Paulding County, Pebblebrook, and South Cobb. A couple of teams that kind of give you pause over there. McEachern certainly, and Harrison, and then Hillgrove, who we've seen kind of up and down over the last few years. But an opportunity to get to the playoffs, and maybe for one of these Cherokee County teams, in the largest classification, Etowah and Cherokee, but certainly an opportunity to get into the playoffs and make some noise, as we mentioned that if Cherokee can find a way to cut down on those turnovers, especially I think they were bitten really hard by those red zone turnovers. I think that really cost them a lot last season. They can kind of find a way to eliminate those, establish that run game, as Coach Holly talked about, and he listed off a bevy of running backs they have back there to tote the load. So we'll see a different identity from the Warriors. But look, if you can run the football, you can certainly win in the state of Georgia. That's for sure.
Absolutely, and I think they have a good opportunity to do that this year, and I'm excited to see what they bring on the field to send Tommy Baker off as it certainly deserves, hopefully with a playoff game and win would be very nice. So,
absolutely.
Well, Art, my friend, we did it. All 6 teams, all 6 coaches. We've done it again. We've been doing this for a while, but here we are again.
Who knows? Yeah, it's been a minute, and we'd be remiss if we didn't again thank all of our coaches. I know some of that sounds cliche, but it really does mean a lot to us. Helps make our program when they are willing to give up their time and come and face us. And I know we're not here to ask anybody gotcha questions, but we certainly are here so that these coaches can highlight their programs, their players, and we appreciate their time taken out of their busy schedule, as we know that we've had to rearrange some things, just to make sure we made it all fit. But they're so accommodating with us, and we do appreciate that. And again, I'm excited to be as part of the coverage of Cherokee County football this season, again with the North Georgia Sports Network. I'm looking forward to the new features that we're going to be putting out, mainly by my guy Will Cooper over here on the other side of the screen from me. But yeah, we made it, Will. We're here. I feel like we get to this point almost every year. Like it sneaks up on us. We should know better, but kind of like the beginning of July, we're like, wait a minute, football will be here in less than 30 days. And certainly we're now within, a week and a half before the regular season starts. Corky Kell gets, tipped off in earnest, next Wednesday. So yeah, it is upon us. I'm excited. We will have our podcast next week. We'll talk about our power. We'll save our power rankings.
Yep.
Until week 2, until we have a body of work. So we'll leave some to be desired, but we'll be back next week, certainly with our preview of all 6 games not 6 games, excuse me, all 4 games, as all 6 teams will be in action. Let me make sure I get that straight. And we'll be bringing that to you as well. And again, some other exciting features on social media that will be spearheading for us.
Absolutely. Make sure you're locked into all of our social media platforms. If you don't know where to find them, just go to northgasportsnetwork.com. They're all right up there at the top. And of course, you can find us, if you'd rather do it the old-fashioned way, there's North GA Sportsnet on all platforms now, so you'll be able to find us nice and easy. And again, we'll be bringing you all sorts of coverage this year, doing it a little differently, but hopefully at a high level, so that everybody gets their fill of Cherokee County football, and we're able to provide you with all the coverage that you've come to expect. So, Art, I'm excited for next week, buddy. We got some real live-action football to talk about. Everybody will be through their scrimmages, so we'll get a better idea of where we sit with some of these teams. But great work today, my friend, and excited to see you next week.
Excited to see you next week, Coop. Thanks so much, and thank you, everybody, for joining us on the North Georgia Sports Network.